Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I hereby declare open the 39th meeting of the 30th session of the Human Rights Council. We will now continue with the list of speakers, and namely with the list of members of the Council. I would now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Germany.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Germany aligns itself with the statement made on behalf of the European Union. With regard to Yemen, Germany is deeply concerned about the high number of civilian casualties and the worrying rise in the recruitment and use of children in the armed conflict in Yemen. We call on all parties to the conflict to respect the obligations under international humanitarian law. At the same time, we reiterate that humanitarian access to all parts of the country and for all groups of the population must be provided without restrictions. A ceasefire agreement and the resumption of the political process are urgently needed in order to improve the human rights situation in Yemen and to stabilize the country. Germany condemns the continued atrocities and other violent acts committed by the terror group Boko Haram and thanks the High Commissioner for his report. We express our heartfelt sympathy to those affected in the region. All those responsible must be held to account. We reiterate our call on the government of Nigeria and those of the neighboring countries to investigate all suspected human rights violations independently and in accordance with international standards. They include worrying reports of extrajudicial executions, arbitrary detentions and torture. We would therefore welcome it if the High Commissioner would continue to brief the Council. We take this opportunity to encourage all Member States of the multinational Joint Task Force against Boko Haram to render it fully operational as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Ireland, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Good morning to you and to colleagues. Ireland would like to add some remarks to those already made on our behalf in the statement of the European Union. We reiterate our strong and continued support to the Office of the High Commissioner in the areas of technical cooperation and capacity building. The work of the Office in this area plays a crucial role in strengthening the promotion and protection of human rights in all our countries. We commend the Office for its multifaceted approach as well as its engagement with a wide range of stakeholders, which can facilitate constructive dialogue and yield tangible results. My delegation is happy to take this opportunity to comment on some issues covered in oral updates and reports submitted to the Council under Agenda Item 10 at this session, which are not the subject of separate interactive dialogues. We do note with regret, however, that several of the reports under this agenda item, and indeed others, were made available very late, including during the last week of the Council session. We would like to express our appreciation to the Office for the summary report on the panel discussion on national policies and human rights held at the Council's 28th session earlier this year. The interesting and very useful discussion highlighted the complementary and mutually reinforcing roles which civil society, national human rights institutions, business and media organisations can play in contributing to the promotion and protection of human rights at the national level. The High Commissioner's report on the situation of human rights in Yemen shows a marked deterioration since the last report. We are gravely concerned at the situation of the civilian population, who always suffered the most during armed conflict, and at reports of indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks, use of cluster munitions, and denial of access to medical care. We urge all actors to comply strictly with their obligations under international human rights law and international humanitarian law as relevant, and hope that all violations and abuses will be thoroughly investigated and those responsible brought to justice. We express our appreciation for the detailed report on Iraq and our revulsion at the barbarous treatment of civilians, especially members of national and religious minorities, and in particular women and girls, by the so-called ISIL, including their being subjected to harrowing acts of sexual and physical violence and to sexual slavery. We urge the Iraqi authorities to ensure that all actions taken to counter terrorism, whether by the Iraqi security forces or affiliated militias, are carried out with strict respect for human rights. Allow me to conclude, Madam Vice President, by thanking the High Commissioner and his staff at headquarters and in the field for the dedication and commitment shown in their vital work to advance the promotion and protection of human rights throughout the world. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Sierra Leone, please.
Madam Vice President, Sierra Leone would like to take this opportunity to express appreciation of the work being done by the independent experts and OHCHR in providing technical assistance to various countries to enable them to fulfill their human rights commitments. Such technical assistance is vital for many countries, which, even though they may have the political will, lack the technical expertise to draw up relevant legislation, establish human rights mechanisms and structures. Indeed, one of the greatest achievements of OHCHR is the intensification of its efforts in the field where human rights violations occur. The recommendations of the various reports demonstrate the breadth of work that has been covered under these agenda items. However, implementation of these recommendations suffer the same fate as the UPR recommendations. I intend in this statement to ask questions about the role of the Council in transforming the hard work of the experts into action and impact in the field. For instance, one point which came out strongly from the independent expert on Somalia is the lack of financial means to address the human rights concerns. What role does this Council need to take to ensure that funding is secured for some of the most pressing human rights requirements? Another setback are the complications posed by ongoing conflicts in some of the countries in which technical assistance is being provided. Certainly this leads to frustration as gains are reversed on an ongoing basis, as in the case of CAR. In such cases, it is important that attention not be focused only on the work of the human rights capacity to the exclusion of the political processes for the resolution of the conflicts. Again, what role can the Human Rights Council play in ensuring that these situations do not remain forgotten crises whilst human rights experts are struggling to provide technical assistance in the midst of fully blown conflicts? Sierra Leone is also concerned that some countries which have agreed to the need for technical assistance under Agenda Item 10 should then not facilitate the work of the experts, deny access, and do not implement the recommendations made. What role does the Council have to guard against this? Before concluding this statement, my delegation would like to comment on the OHCHR report on Boko Haram. While thanking OHCHR for the report, we do not believe that the report portrays sufficiently the urgency of the need to curb the atrocities perpetrated by Boko Haram on innocent civilians, including the 200 Chibok students that are yet to be released. We would like to urge the international community to provide more robust assistance to the affected countries to enable them to address the scourge of Boko Haram. Meanwhile, funding for humanitarian activities, which according to the OCHA Financial Tracking Service now stands at below 50% of the budgets for the affected countries, would need to be stepped up. Madam Vice President, I thank you.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Venezuela, please.
Gracias, señora vicepresidenta. Nos asociamos a la declaración de la India en nombre del Like-Minded Group. Tomamos nota de la actualización oral del informe del Alto Comisionado. Vicepresidenta, el tema 10 de la agenda de este Consejo fue concebido para abordar la asistencia técnica y el fomento de la capacidad con el concurso del país concernido y contribuir así a mejorar la situación de los derechos humanos en el terreno, actuando siempre en consonancia con los principios del diálogo genuino y la cooperación, pilares fundamentales de su labor. Respecto a Myanmar, debe recordarse que este país fue víctima de una cruenta guerra y de la colonización por potencias extranjeras durante décadas. Reconocemos el esfuerzo invertido por su gobierno en pro de la unidad de la nación, habiendo impulsado un proceso de estabilidad nacional. Destacamos los pasos que ha adelantado hacia la firma de un alto al fuego en todo el país y en ese contexto también nos alienta que no se hayan registrado nuevos incidentes desde el año pasado. Señora Vicepresidenta, Myanmar reconoce los desafíos que enfrenta el país y ha reiterado su disposición de seguir colaborando con el Sistema de Naciones Unidas para los Derechos Humanos. Estamos convencidos que la asistencia y cooperación con estrecha participación del país es un gran aporte para el fortalecimiento de la unidad nacional en una estrategia de desarrollo a largo plazo que posibilite un mayor bienestar a su población. Las sanciones impuestas unilateralmente a Myanmar han producido efectos negativos, dificultando una solución duradera que permita la consolidación del ejercicio de todos los derechos humanos, incluido el derecho al desarrollo, sin discriminación alguna. Señora Vicepresidenta, consideramos que es necesario seguir apoyando los esfuerzos de Myanmar para alcanzar una sociedad pacífica y armoniosa, en un diálogo político inclusivo con apego a los principios universales del respeto a la soberanía y la libre autodeterminación de los pueblos. Alentamos a Myanmar a seguir avanzando hacia la consolidación de la estabilidad política del país y por la vigencia de los derechos humanos en su territorio. Para finalizar, Venezuela reitera su compromiso por la protección de los derechos humanos universales, indivisibles, interdependientes e interrelacionados sobre la base del diálogo genuino y la cooperación, y por tanto, siempre se opondrá a los intentos de politización de espacios tan cuidados como el tema 10 de la Agenda del Consejo de Derechos Humanos. Muchas gracias, señora Vicepresidenta.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of France, please.
Merci Madame la Présidente. La France s'associe à la déclaration de l'Union européenne. Les incidents meurtriers des 26 et 27 septembre en République centrafricaine rappellent combien la situation reste fragile. Les autorités centrafricaines de transition doivent garder le cap de la consolidation de la sortie de crise et de la réconciliation nationale amorcée par le Forum de Bangui et dont les événements récents illustrent à nouveau la nécessité urgente. L'organisation d'élections d'ici la fin de l'année demeure l'objectif central pour doter le pays d'institutions élues et stables qui poursuivront la reconstruction dans la durée. L'appui déterminé et constant de la communauté internationale, y compris en matière de droits de l'homme et de lutte contre l'impunité, reste la clé pour contribuer à remettre sur pied la RCA. En République démocratique du Congo, des mesures positives ont été prises pour lutter contre les violences sexuelles et pour assurer la protection des enfants dans les conflits armés. Les décisions judiciaires qui ont été rendues cette année sur des cas de graves violations des droits de l'homme sont également encourageantes compte tenu de l'importance de la lutte contre l'impunité. La France encourage la RDC à poursuivre et à amplifier ses efforts en faveur du respect des droits de l'homme. À l'approche d'un nouveau cycle électoral décisif pour la stabilisation durable et l'enracinement de la démocratie en RDC, la France appelle les autorités à assurer le plein respect des libertés publiques. Au Yémen, la France est préoccupée par la détérioration de la situation des droits de l'homme et de la situation humanitaire. Il est essentiel de permettre l'acheminement de l'aide humanitaire à la population civile qui fait face à de graves pénuries. Nous appelons les autorités légitimes du Yémen à tout mettre en œuvre pour que les violations commises ne demeurent pas impunies. Nous appelons par ailleurs les parties à rechercher une solution politique au conflit dans le cadre de la résolution 2216 et à veiller au respect des droits de l'homme sur le terrain afin d'assurer à la population civile une amélioration de la situation humanitaire au Yémen. La France reste également préoccupée par la situation en Ukraine. La France salue l'adoption par les autorités ukrainiennes d'une stratégie pour les droits de l'homme dont elle encourage la mise en œuvre rapide. Elle invite l'Ukraine à poursuivre sur la voie des réformes et vers l'accomplissement de ses engagements liés aux accords de Minsk en coopération avec le Haut Commissariat aux droits de l'homme et les autres organisations impliquées dans la résolution de la crise. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of UK, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The UK aligns itself with the statement made on behalf of the EU and would like to make some additional remarks. We are deeply concerned by the human rights situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Violations and abuses of human rights remain at an unacceptably high level. We value the work of the UN Joint Human Rights Office in the DRC and call on the government of the DRC to strengthen its collaboration with the office so that fundamental freedoms are respected. This is particularly important in the run-up to elections. We remain concerned about the fragile security and humanitarian situation in the Central African Republic. Free, fair and inclusive elections are crucial for CAR's future stability and progress towards reconciliation. It is key that all Central Africans, including refugees in neighbouring countries, are given the opportunity to participate in the constitutional referendum and presidential elections to enable the transition towards an elected government that has wide acceptance and represents interests of all. The UK continues to support the extension of the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on Cambodia. The UK remains concerned that new legislation in Cambodia concerning NGOs does not adequately safeguard existing freedoms and will negatively impact on civil society. We would like to underline the importance of meaningful consultation on any future draft legislation affecting human rights. We also remain concerned by the human rights situation in Somalia. We commend the efforts of AMISOM and the Somali National Army in freeing much of Somalia from al-Shabaab. We call on AMISOM and the Somali National Army to uphold their zero-tolerance policy for human rights abuses. We urge the federal government of Somalia to establish key human rights legislation and institutions and to reach agreement on an inclusive electoral process for 2016. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of China, please.
副主席先生，中方赞同印度代表观点相近国家集团在议题10下所作共同发言。中方始终主张加强人权领域技术援助与能力建设，赞赏人权高专办为应对持续增长的技术援助需求所做努力，鼓励高专办不断改善资源调度、分配和使用效率，确保技术援助与能力建设资金的可持续性，提高技术援助与能力建设领域筹款和资金使用的透明度。同时，高专办在开展人权技术援助与能力建设活动中，应把握以下原则：一是技术援助和能力建设活动应在事先与当事国广泛磋商并获其同意基础上进行。确定拨款优先领域时，应充分尊重受援国主导权，符合当事国需要。要努力保证人权领域技术合作自愿基金的独立使用。二是坚持联合国宪章宗旨和原则及国际关系基本准则，尊重各国独立、主权和领土完整。要防止借技术援助和能力建设之名，将人权问题政治化或干涉他国内政的做法。三是坚持综合施策，标本兼治，重视当事国经济社会发展、国家和平安定，这是充分实现所有人权的根本保障。主席先生，缅甸群族问题有其复杂的历史、民族和宗教原因，有关国家和地区应推动相关方通过对话沟通的方式解决矛盾。国际社会应更多通过技术援助，加强能力建设，帮助缅甸提高自主促进和保护人权的能力。作为缅甸的友好邻邦，中方真诚希望缅甸保持稳定、经济发展、社会和谐、人民安居乐业。谢谢副主席女士。
The distinguished representative of U.S., please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The UN's mission to promote full respect for all human rights is not solely one of advocacy and reporting, though these functions are plainly critical. To truly achieve our shared goal, the United Nations must also work to assist governments to identify areas of concern and assist in the design and implementation of human rights protections. The United States commends OHCHR and countries that are cooperating with it to promote the protection of human rights. We also call on countries with ongoing challenges to consider the role the UN can play to improve their domestic situation. In Thailand, The government continues to restrict fundamental freedoms, prosecute civilians in military courts, and place civilians in military detention without due process of law. We are concerned by the persistent intimidation of opposition leaders and journalists which contribute to self-censorship. We urge the government to fully restore civil liberties and return Thailand to a civilian, democratic government through free and fair elections as soon as possible. It should commit to an inclusive process that results in a constitution that protects human rights and strengthens the rule of law and democratic institutions. Finally, we are very concerned about the ongoing conflict in Yemen. We are particularly troubled by the dire humanitarian situation, violence, and shelling by Houthi militia and other armed groups, often in heavily populated areas. We are deeply concerned by reports of civilian deaths and damage to civilian infrastructure caused by coalition airstrikes. As the conflict in Yemen escalates, the devastation and effects on the civilian population has increased. We continue to strongly support the UN-led process and efforts of the UN Special Envoy to Yemen to bring the Yemeni parties back to the table without preconditions and towards a political dialogue that will end the fighting and help create a sustainable path forward. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Japan, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Japan commends the OHCHR for its activities in providing technical cooperation and also commends the countries for their cooperation with the OHCHR. We consider it important and effective that the international community encourages and supports efforts by countries concerned to promote and protect human rights. Japan welcomes the fact that an agreement on the resolution of the conflict in the Republic of South Sudan was signed by the relevant parties. At the same time, Japan expresses its concern in regard to the worsening human rights situation on the ground. Japan hopes that the terms agreed on will be faithfully observed so that the people of South Sudan can enjoy a peaceful society as soon as possible. We recognize that the human rights situation in Cambodia has gradually improved since the end of the civil war. We have to admit, however, that there still remain human rights issues to be addressed, not only those related to the Khmer Rouge Code, but also to land concession, the rule of law, judicial reforms, and civil society space. As such, Japan further encourages efforts by Cambodia to improve the human rights situation, and we are ready to provide our utmost cooperation in this regard. Japan shares the concerns by the international community on the human rights situation of ethnic and religious minorities in Myanmar, especially of those in Rakhine State, and it also shares concerns regarding the related irregular migration. Japan notes with appreciation that Myanmar has been regularly accepting visits by the Special Rapporteur and expects that Myanmar will continue to cooperate with UN human rights mechanisms as well as other countries in the region and beyond to promote and protect human rights. We expect that the general election in November will be held in a free and fair manner, and in this regard intends to send an election monitoring mission. We will continue to support Myanmar's efforts towards democratization as well as its efforts to promote and protect human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Maldives, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Maldives commends OHCHR for its tireless efforts in providing technical assistance and capacity building to states in need. The Maldives appreciates their firm commitment and strongly encourages the office to continue working with equal dedication. It is of crucial importance to bridge the existing gap between states' legal obligations and concrete actions aiming at assuring the full enjoyment of human rights of its citizens. In this context, the Maldives believes that in the modern globalized world, international cooperation leading to improvement of institutional and technical capacities of individual states is necessary for the effective promotion and protection of human rights on the global level. This being said, the Maldives reminds all that external aid must be based on principles of cooperation and genuine dialogue with concerned states. It is imperative that any consultations, advisory services, technical assistance or capacity building activities are undertaken with the explicit consent of the interested party and take into account specific local conditions and particularities. The Maldives takes note of the visit of the High Commissioner to Central African Republic and his findings. The Maldives also appreciates the efforts of OHCHR in Sudan and South Sudan and urges the countries to engage with the office. The Maldives also takes into consideration the situation of human rights in Yemen and call on the OHCHR to provide the necessary technical assistance and urge the international community to continue its financial support to ensure that the government can strengthen its efforts to address the human rights and humanitarian situation in the country. Mr. President, while recognizing that the primary responsibility for the promotion and protection of human rights lies with states, the Maldives welcomes involvement of UN agencies in activities effectively fostering implementation of human rights in countries requiring such assistance. The Maldives is of the opinion that in order to achieve the best results, national efforts should be complemented with genuine international programs designed to accommodate each state's particular needs. The Maldives will continue its engagement-first policy, and in this regard, this year alone has facilitated visits of OHCHR, Commonwealth, ICRC, as well as civil society organizations, to name a few. The Maldives will maintain dialogue with its international partners, which offer their sincere assistance towards the good of the people of the Maldives. To conclude, recognizing that further consolidation of technical cooperation and the provision of requested assistance is vital for the concerned states' development in the field of human rights and beyond, the Maldives encourages states in need not to hesitate requesting technical support from either the Office of the High Commissioner or other relevant UN agency or international community. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Ghana, please.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of Ghana aligns itself with a statement made by Algeria on behalf of the African Group. Ghana welcomes the oral update and reports presented by the Office of the High Commissioner yesterday. The reports under consideration show that there is still more room for improvement in addressing the various situations that should remain of concern to this Council, be it fighting the Boko Haram brand of terrorism in West Africa, enhancing the protection of minorities in Myanmar, or investigating and holding persons responsible for past or ongoing mass atrocity crimes accountable for their heinous acts in Cambodia, Iraq, South Sudan, and Yemen. It should not be difficult for us to imagine that the over 200 schoolgirls kidnapped by Boko Haram are still suffering and silently crying in distress for help, and so they should never be forgotten by this Council. The international community must redouble their efforts to come to their rescue by continuing to support the efforts of Nigeria and neighboring countries in West Africa to defeat the menace of Boko Haram. We urge all the South Sudanese parties to honor the peace agreements they have signed with adequate support of the international community, including the UN and the AU. Ghana is encouraged to hear from the Assistant Secretary General's oral update that the OHCHR enjoy the cooperation of the governments of all the concerned countries in the provision of technical assistance during the reporting period. Ghana believes that a commitment by the concerned countries to introduce and implement accountability mechanisms to check widespread and systematic violations of international human rights and humanitarian laws, coupled with the unrelenting backing of this Council and the OHCHR, should form an integral part of the effort to promote peace, security and human rights for the people in the countries or situations of concern to the international community. If the 70th anniversary theme of the UN General Assembly, UN at 70, the road to peace, security and human rights, is to have any concrete meaning and relevance for this Council and Member States. Mr. President, this month the General Assembly, of which the Human Rights Council forms an integral part, has begun its 70th session on this theme, thus emphasizing the need for all countries to reaffirm their commitment to uphold their obligations to promote, protect and fulfill the human rights of their people, especially in the country-specific situation on the agenda of this Council. Madam President, therefore this Council must continue to uphold its mandate to prevent and address situations everywhere in which gross violations of international human rights and humanitarian law, such as acts of genocide, crimes against humanity and ethnic cleansing and war crimes occur, and to fight impunity. In so doing, this Council must strive to strike a reasonable balance between the sovereign principle of non-interference, which underscores our sovereign independence and territorial integrity of Member States on the one hand, and the humanitarian principle of non-indifference, which speaks to global interdependence on the other hand, with the ultimate goal of fighting and deterring impunity. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Vietnam, please.
Good morning, Madam Vice President. In Myanmar, there is now an ongoing process of democratization and reconciliation and national reform towards social tolerance and harmony, peace and prosperity. There is much more to be done there, but this process, initiated and driven by Myanmar and her people, is continue with enhanced commitments. Apart from Myanmar's own political will and action, and if we take a look back a decade or two, it is the constructive engagement, genuine dialogue and effective assistance of the regional community, countries and international partners based on principle of international law that has made this process possible and become commendably irreversible. Politicization, undue pressure, impatience or interference could never accomplish such a mission. I would not leave my intervention without earnestly and strongly reiterating that very message, simple one, which my delegation has raised on numerous occasions here in this House. Madam Vice President, concerns of members of the international community and stakeholders over recent events in and around the country are registered with my delegation. And for my delegation, outstanding concerns and challenges not only require action, but also, if not more importantly, represent opportunities for intensified engagement and effective cooperation. Therefore, I call upon all stakeholders, including Myanmar, UN mechanisms and interested international partners to continue employing the approach of dialogue and engagement. And I would also call upon the international community to continue working closely with regional countries and institutions, including ASEAN, in their tireless efforts in supporting and enabling Myanmar's cause of national development and reconciliation and tolerance. On this occasion, Vietnam wishes Myanmar all the best in further protecting and promoting human rights and improving the living conditions of her people, especially the vulnerable groups and minorities. And I thank you, Madam Vice President.
I thank you. The distinguished representative of El Salvador, please.
Buenos días, señora Vicepresidente. Mi delegación desea agradecer al Alto Comisionado por la presentación de su informe sobre las violaciones y abusos cometidos por Boko Haram y el impacto que estos abusos y violaciones de derechos humanos han tenido en diferentes países. Dicho informe es una respuesta al acordado en la resolución que este Consejo aprobó en la sesión especial celebrada en el pasado mes de abril. Nos parece que el informe es completo, compartimos sus preocupaciones y deploramos la situación que miles de personas atraviesan por las acciones de este grupo terrorista. El Salvador, como Estado suscriptor de diversos instrumentos jurídicos internacionales y de derechos humanos, condena enérgicamente la escalada de violencia contra la población de Nigeria y los países vecinos provocados por el grupo terrorista autodenominado Boko Haram. El Salvador, como Estado parte de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas, externa su apoyo a todas las acciones que tengan por objetivo frenar y erradicar los hechos de barbarie cometidos por Boko Haram y insta a la comunidad internacional a impulsar medidas que coadyuven a tal fin, especialmente a las destinadas a combatir la financiación, promoción y apología del terrorismo. Instan a los gobiernos que se han visto afectados a que continúen adoptando y aplicando medidas para fortalecer, defender y ayudar a la población civil, con el objeto de hacer frente a los abusos y violaciones en contra de sus derechos humanos. Finalmente, El Salvador envía un mensaje de solidaridad y acompañamiento a los familiares de las víctimas afectadas por estos trágicos hechos. Gracias, señora Vicepresidente.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of South Africa, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The South African delegation has noted with interest the report of the High Commissioner on violations and abuses committed by Boko Haram and the impact on human rights in the affected countries, in particular the recommendations. It is imperative for all parties to respect the fundamental tenets of international human rights and humanitarian law for the better protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. South Africa also agrees with the common positions of the African Union, including those of its regional economic communities, for the resolution of conflict and disputes through peaceful means. Although there is currently no universally agreed definition of terrorism, there are several common factors on which there is broad consensus. Chief among these are issues of poverty, marginalization, and exclusion, which in themselves could lead to intolerance and extremism. We encourage the people of Nigeria, working collaboratively with their neighbors and in the context of ECOWAS, to find a lasting and durable solution through peaceful means to the ongoing instability precipitated by the Boko Haram insurgency into the sovereign territory of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Madam Vice President, extremism, if not detected at an early stage and contained through effective legislation and other appropriate means, can easily degenerate into violent manifestations and terrorist acts. It is therefore imperative that the international community work collaboratively with Nigeria and its regional mechanisms towards the resolution of the conflict and instability caused by the actions of Boko Haram. The principal object and purpose of the Charter of the United Nations impel us to work and discharge our global responsibilities within such a framework. We commend the Nigerian government for the priority it has accorded to this intractable issue and for all its efforts to bring about a peaceful end to the current violence and instability brought about by the activities of Boko Haram. We wish to express our support and best wishes to the people of Nigeria from all the persuasions, as well as those of the region, in their endeavor toward the ideal of embracing diversity and tolerance as a cherished value. I thank you.
Thank you. We will continue now with a list of observer states of the Council. I give now the floor to the distinguished representative of Turkey.
Madam Vice President, we thank the Deputy High Commissioner and the Assistant Secretary General for their oral updates yesterday. Regarding the human rights situation of Rohingya Muslims and other minorities in Myanmar, it is our strong desire that the government of Myanmar respects human rights and fundamental freedoms of its people, regardless of their race and religion. We encourage the government of Myanmar to ensure the security and the protection of the basic rights and well-being of all people in the Rakhine State. In view of the upcoming elections, we are seriously concerned about the deprivation of the Rohingyas of their right to vote in the election by means of a series of administrative and legal arrangements. One of the basic human rights, the right to vote, should not be undermined, and necessary steps for granting full citizenship rights to Rohingya Muslims should be taken. Furthermore, more than 100,000 Muslims in Rakhine State continue to live in IDP camps for the last 3 years. More than 1 million Rohingya in Rakhine State continue to confront restrictions. All this is resulting in their perilous migration in the Andaman Sea through the exploitation of criminal rings. Taking into consideration the tragedy that such movements of people may restart and the risks that IDPs are facing in that area, we sincerely call upon the government of Myanmar to find a durable solution for displaced people. While Turkey supports recent efforts of the government regarding the settlement of some of the Muslim IDPs in cooperation with the international community, we would like to underline the importance of the return of IDPs to their place of origin, as well as their return to normal living conditions. Finally, Turkey firmly believes in the policy of dialogue and cooperation. It is our hope that in November credible, transparent and inclusive parliamentary elections will be held, aiming to mark a turning point for an inclusive and strengthened democracy in Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Council of Europe, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The protection of human rights at national level cannot be effective if those that are at the forefront, mainly legal professionals, are not fully equipped to deal with it. Many projects implemented by the Council of Europe have therefore specifically targeted this professional group. Access to the judicial profession and the harmonized body of case law at national level being a precondition to a coherent implementation of the European Convention on Human Rights, the Council of Europe worked with courts, judicial councils and ministries of justice in several member states to achieve this aim. The Council of Europe's European Programme for Human Rights Education for Legal Professionals, the so-called HELP program, is today the only genuine pan-European program of legal education based on a network of national training institutions and bar associations of the 47 member states of the Council of Europe. This achievement is the result of the HELP methodology, with its tailor-made approach to developing and adapting to national training systems and various categories of legal professionals, the quality of its training models, integrating the Convention perspective in national law, its approach to enhancing the capacity of national trainers, thus creating a strong sense of national ownership over the training, and its adaptation to the reality of the legal professionals' workload by relying on modern technologies. New courses were developed as a response to the social challenges faced in Europe, such as on anti-discrimination, hate speech, hate crime and asylum, in cooperation with other international organizations with expertise in the respective fields, including UN agencies such as UNHCR. Through in-depth training in Eastern Partnership countries and the Russian Federation, over 4,000 lawyers have been encouraged to bring well-founded discrimination cases to national courts and the European Court of Human Rights. A number of national first instance judgments have already shown the impact of this training. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Egypt, please.
شكرا سيدتي نائبة الرئيس. يود وفد بلادي أن ينوه بتقرير المفوض السامي لحقوق الإنسان بشأن انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان التي ارتكبتها جماعة بوكو حرام في بعض دول القارة الأفريقية. لقد شهدت ظاهرة الإرهاب مراحل من التغير النوعي بحيث صارت تتسم بخطورة بالغة الجسامة ودرجة من التدمير والتخريب لم يعهدها المجتمع الدولي في السابق. كما صار لظاهرة الإرهاب آثارها الوخيمة على طائفة واسعة من حقوق الإنسان وحرياته الأساسية، خاصة الحق في الحياة والحرية والأمن الشخصي. إن القارة الأفريقية تتعرض في وقتنا الراهن لتحدي جسيم يستهدف قدرة المواطن الأفريقي على التمتع بحقوق الإنسان وحرياته الأساسية، وهو ذلك التحدي الذي يتجسد في الجرائم المستنكرة التي يرتكبها تنظيم بوكو حرام في بعض دول القارة، خاصة نيجيريا وتشاد والكاميرون والنيجر، وهي الجرائم التي أثرت سلبا على ركائز البنية الاقتصادية والاجتماعية في تلك الدول الشقيقة. إن وفد بلادي يوجه الدعوة للمجتمع الدولي ممثلا في الأمم المتحدة ووكالاتها المتخصصة المعنية التي تختص بدور مركزي في هذا السياق للقيام بدورها من أجل توجيه الدعم والمساعدة الفنية اللازمة للدول المتأثرة بالأنشطة الإرهابية التي يرتكبها تنظيم بوكو حرام. سيدتي نائبة الرئيس، يود وفد بلادي أن ينوه بتقرير المفوض السامي لحقوق الإنسان حول حماية حقوق الإنسان في العراق وتعزيزها، وكذلك بتقرير المفوضية السامية لحقوق الإنسان حول أضعاف حقوق الإنسان في اليمن. إننا نتابع عن كثب التطورات الجارية على صعيد أوضاع حقوق الإنسان في العراق واليمن وجنوب السودان التي تمر بظروف صعبة كان لها آثارها الجسيمة، ونناشد المجتمع الدولي في هذا الصدد أن يطلع بدوره المحوري في تقديم الدعم الفني والمساعدة اللازمة من أجل إنهاض هذه الدول والخروج بها من أوضاعها الصعبة وإعانتها على ترقية أوضاع حقوق الإنسان بها. شكرا سيدتي الرئيس.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Ukraine, please. The representative of Ukraine are absent, so we shall continue with the distinguished representative of Senegal, please.
Merci Madame la Vice-Présidente. Le Sénégal s'associe à la déclaration prononcée par l'Algérie au nom du groupe africain. Nous remercions le Haut-Commissaire pour son rapport qui révèle que de nombreux défis restent à être relevés dans le domaine de la promotion des droits de l'homme. Au Soudan du Sud, il est essentiel d'accompagner le processus de paix de manière à éviter toute escalade préjudiciable aux populations civiles. Au Myanmar, nous appelons le gouvernement à prendre les mesures pour résoudre les problèmes de discrimination auxquels les musulmans rohingyas sont confrontés. S'agissant de la secte terroriste Boko Haram, nous constatons qu'elle continue ses sinistres actes de barbarie malgré les efforts déployés par les pays membres de la force multinationale interarmée. Ce groupe continue de semer la mort, d'enrôler de force des jeunes et poursuit les enlèvements et les viols contre des femmes et des filles. Le Sénégal manifeste sa solidarité aux pays touchés par les agissements de cette secte et salue les actions vigoureuses menées par le Nigeria, le Cameroun, le Tchad, le Niger, le Bénin, membres de la force multinationale. Nous appelons la communauté internationale à renforcer son appui à ces États afin de mettre un terme aux crimes odieux perpétrés par cette secte. À cet effet, les populations civiles victimes des agissements de ce groupe terroriste doivent sentir de manière active l'assistance de la communauté internationale. Ma délégation invite la communauté internationale et en particulier le Conseil de sécurité à agir en amont pour couper et tarir toutes les sources de financement et d'approvisionnement en armes du groupe Boko Haram. Monsieur le Président, l'assistance technique et le renforcement des capacités dans le domaine des droits de l'homme sont au cœur du mandat du Conseil et du Bureau du Haut-Commissaire. À cet égard, il est important de renforcer en moyens matériels et humains les bureaux du Haut-Commissaire pour leur permettre de remplir avec efficacité leur mission. Pour conclure, le Sénégal félicite le Haut-Commissaire pour son initiative dénommée Change Initiative qui pourrait contribuer positivement à l'amélioration de la situation des droits de l'homme dans le monde. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Georgia, please.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation wishes to make comments related to the evaluation report of the UN Human Rights Office on the implementation of the second phase of the World Programme for Human Rights Education. I would like to stress that human rights issues remain an integral part of educational programs at the institutions of higher education in Georgia. Notably, institutions of higher education actively cooperate with the NGOs working on human rights issues. As a result, public lectures are given by local and foreign lecturers. Winter and summer schools are organized. Human rights law weeks take place and relevant periodicals are issued. In National Curriculum 2011-2016, human rights education is covered by the social science group subjects. On all three levels of general education, the subjects of social sciences are taught in coordination, considering the age, peculiarities and abilities of a student. Georgia devotes considerable time to scrutinize how civic education topics are implemented at the public schools. The Ministry of Education and Science of Georgia is committed to taking appropriate awareness-raising measures at all three levels of education. Furthermore, gender-responsive training modules for civic education teachers have been prepared. Teachers of civic education have been trained. Civic education trainers and school teachers of social sciences were also trained in gender equality. The law enforcement agencies are also involved in the educational process. For instance, the Project Legal Education program in Georgia provides the education on adolescent and domestic violence, as well as on facilitation of non-violent communication and interaction. The given classes are delivered jointly by representatives of law enforcement and class teacher. We firmly believe that human rights education will tremendously assist any society in raising a full-fledged responsible citizen. Therefore, we will move forward in this direction and encourage others to do so. I thank you.
I thank you. The distinguished representative of Libya, please. It seems that they are not here. The distinguished representative of UNICEF, please.
Thank you. Madam Vice President, UNICEF welcomes the report of the High Commissioner on Yemen and the continued efforts of the government of Yemen and partners despite the ongoing conflict to work towards fulfilling the rights of the child. In particular, we congratulate the authorities and their partners on successfully administering exams to 500,000 grade 9 and 12 children who missed earlier exams because of the active conflict. We also appreciate the rollout of the integrated management of health and nutrition services and the vaccinations of at least 4 million children against polio and 1.5 million against measles and rubella. Finally, we applaud the exceptional efforts made by the authorities in Yemen and their partners to provide more than 3 million people with access to safe water, garbage collection and water treatment. Madam Vice President, while welcoming these achievements in such a challenging context, UNICEF is extremely concerned that children continue to be victims of grave child rights violations. Since the escalation of the conflict in March, child deaths and serious injuries are already almost 4 times compared with the same year in 2014. Children used or recruited by armed forces and armed groups also increased 4-fold, while children abducted has jumped 9-fold. We strongly urge all parties to the conflict to abide by international human rights and humanitarian law for the protection of children. In closing, Madam Vice President, UNICEF strongly urges all parties to the conflict to protect civilians and civilian infrastructures, including schools, hospitals, and health centers, to end the recruitment and use of children and release those already recruited, and urges the government to resume the implementation of the action plan to address child recruitment, to ensure humanitarian access to the affected population and take immediate steps to facilitate the urgent delivery of humanitarian assistance and fuel for civilian purposes to all parts of Yemen. Thank you. Madam.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Belarus, please.
Спасибо, госпожа заместитель председателя. В связи с дискуссией по докладам Верховного комиссара, Беларусь подтверждает свою твердую позицию о том, что международное сотрудничество в сфере прав человека должно осуществляться в строгом соответствии с мандатами соответствующих структур ООН, с согласия заинтересованных государств и с учетом их национальных приоритетов. Чтобы выполнять возложенные на нее задачи, ООН должна быть форумом сотрудничества, а не конфронтации государств. По пункту 10 Беларусь полностью присоединяется к выступлению Индии от группы государств-единомышленников и хотела бы добавить следующее. Для оказания действенной технической помощи государствам в сфере прав человека не обязательно создавать дорогостоящие специальные процедуры. Благодаря сотрудничеству со структурами ООН государства располагают такими инструментами, как страновые программы, например, в рамках ПРООН, UNFPA, ЮНИСЕФ. Эти программы содержат комплексные меры, нацеленные на развитие национальных систем поощрения и защиты всех прав человека. Такие меры согласованы правительствами государств и включают широкий круг партнеров, в том числе гражданское общество. Международное сотрудничество по реализации страновых программ представляет собой эффективный механизм поощрения и защиты прав человека. Беларусь готова к конструктивному сотрудничеству со всеми заинтересованными партнерами в осуществлении своих страновых программ и призывает активнее задействовать эти полезные инструменты. Благодарю.
Thank you. Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. It is alarming to witness such human rights violations in a country that is celebrated for undergoing so-called political reform. At a time when the international community is lifting sanctions and praising political reform, the Myanmar authorities are continuing with their hostile policies against the Rohingya minority and now even expanding to more Muslim minorities in the country. This can be clearly seen in the recent actions by the government to disenfranchise the Rohingya and the Kaman Muslims from the upcoming national elections in November, under the allegation that they are not citizens but rather illegal Bengalis. This includes individuals with significant legal documentation proving their ancestry. In 2010, more than 500,000 Rohingyas were eligible to participate in the elections as citizens of Myanmar. Suddenly, and without warning, they have been stripped from their right to vote. This is not reform, Madam Vice President, but rather aggression and a clear violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The government has also passed a four-part series of bills known as the Protection of Race and Religion, which is in violation of Myanmar's obligation under the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and the Conventions on the Rights of the Child. The OIC has continuously tried to engage in a positive manner with the government of Myanmar in previous years and has proposed humanitarian, socio-economic and developmental projects to assist the government in providing for its people. However, unfortunately, until today, the permission has not been given. In view of these ongoing actions, the OIC requests the Distinguished Council to urge the government of Myanmar to reinstate all the basic rights of the Rohingya and allow them to vote in the upcoming elections, to prevent incendiary hate speech by the government officials and extreme Buddhist monks, which creates a volatile situation leading to violence, and to prevent the Rohingya from falling prey in unscrupulous human traffickers by addressing the issue of their vulnerabilities and persecution in Myanmar, and finally to allow the establishment of the OIC Humanitarian Office process and unfettered access to all humanitarian aid to villages and IDP camps. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Philippines, please.
Thank you, Madam President. The Philippines takes notes of the oral updates of the human rights situation in Myanmar and Cambodia. Madam President, we trust that with these oral updates, the Council will continue to consider the issues objectively and work constructively with the delegations of Myanmar and Cambodia. We also look forward to the Council's support to the continuing efforts of Myanmar to improve the livelihood, infrastructure, and basic social services, and to promote interfaith and communal harmony through dialogues and awareness raising. Madam Vice President, my delegations also acknowledge the positive developments in Myanmar and Cambodia, particularly the reforms in the democratic processes. We welcome the great strides that Myanmar and Cambodia are taking on human rights. We wish to highlight in particular the efforts of Myanmar in easing the restrictions on freedom of assembly with the introduction of a number of domestic laws guaranteeing this right. We urge Myanmar to continue addressing the root causes of irregular migration and in looking for appropriate solutions to the migration challenges it continues to face, particularly in combating human trafficking and human smuggling. Finally, as a fellow ASEAN member country, we encourage Myanmar and Cambodia to remain engaged in its bilateral and regional development partners in their respective efforts to promote and protect human rights. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Angola, please.
Merci Madame la Vice-Présidente. La République d'Angola souscrit à la déclaration faite par l'Algérie au nom du groupe africain. L'Angola se félicite pour le rapport présenté par le secrétaire général et le commissaire des Nations Unies pour les droits de l'homme sur Boko Haram et le Soudan du Sud. Ma délégation reste préoccupée face aux actes graves et barbares de violations et abus commis contre les droits de l'homme dans les pays concernés et manifeste de profondes inquiétudes pour l'utilisation de femmes, de jeunes et des enfants comme kamikazes et prisonniers. Dans ce contexte, nous saluons et soutenons les engagements pris au niveau de la région pour la création de la force opérationnelle interarmée africaine qui joue un rôle très important dans la lutte contre l'extrémisme violent, le terrorisme ayant permis la libération des territoires jadis occupés par Boko Haram. L'Angola se joint aux efforts déployés par l'Union africaine pour mettre fin aux atrocités commises par les groupes terroristes qui continuent à déstabiliser la région avec des conséquences néfastes sur la population. Madame la Vice-Présidente, ma délégation manifeste sa profonde préoccupation pour la détérioration de la situation humanitaire et les implications socio-économiques qui en découlent et condamne énergiquement les actes terroristes perpétués par le groupe Boko Haram. Quant au Soudan du Sud, nous saluons les accords de paix conclus récemment et demandons à toutes les parties de prendre ses responsabilités pour sa mise en œuvre en vue de mettre fin au conflit. Nous appelons la communauté internationale de porter son soutien aux pays affectés en vue de leur fournir des ressources techniques et financières nécessaires pour venir en aide aux personnes déplacées et garantir en même temps la promotion et protection des droits de l'homme. Je vous remercie pour votre aimable attention.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Canada, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Canada condemns the ongoing and widespread impunity for abuses and violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law in Somalia, including killings, displacement of persons, and diversion or confiscation of humanitarian assistance. Women, children, and internally displaced persons are particularly vulnerable in the continuing insecurity. Canada calls on all parties involved in the conflict to ensure that decisive action is taken to protect the population. We note the efforts undertaken in the Democratic Republic of Congo to combat impunity. However, we remain deeply concerned over the general insecurity that continues in the country's eastern region, the frequent human rights violations, and the precarious humanitarian situation. The continued widespread use of sexual violence by all parties is indefensible and must be stopped. While the country prepares for election, it is crucial that the authorities make every effort to protect the rights of people and ensure that the electoral process is transparent, credible, and compliant with the Constitution. Canada remains concerned about the recent adoption of the law on association and non-governmental organization in Cambodia, which has the potential to restrict civil society. In interpreting this law, we urge the full respect for constitutional provisions concerning pluralism and freedom of association and expression. We are deeply disturbed by this week's report of increased sectarian violence in the Central African Republic. While we are encouraged by the process of the Bangui Forum, evidence of its determination to pursue national reconciliation, justice, and lasting peace, we remain concerned by the level of violence and continuing communal tensions. We encourage the prompt establishment of the Special Criminal Court in order to break the vicious circle of impunity in the country. I thank you.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of African Union.
Merci Madame la Présidente. La Commission de l'Union africaine se joint à la déclaration faite par l'Algérie au nom du groupe africain. Elle remercie le haut-commissaire pour sa mise à jour orale d'aujourd'hui. Permettez-moi tout d'abord de renouveler au nom de la Commission de l'Union africaine notre ferme condamnation des attaques terroristes et meurtrières que continue de perpétuer le groupe terroriste Boko Haram. La Commission de l'Union africaine renouvelle également ses condoléances et toute sa compassion aux familles éprouvées et partage la douleur des familles qui attendent toujours le retour de leurs filles enlevées depuis plus d'1 an. Cette situation ne peut être acceptée et toute la communauté internationale doit se mobiliser afin de mettre fin à ce calvaire. Madame la Présidente, depuis la création de la force multinationale des pays membres de la Commission du bassin de lac Tchad, la confrontation avec le groupe terroriste Boko Haram continue d'une manière frontale et permanente afin de défendre les populations civiles innocentes contre les actes barbares de ce groupe. De tels actes, comme souligné par le haut-commissaire, mettent en péril la jouissance des droits fondamentaux, dont notamment les droits à la vie, à la sécurité, à l'alimentation, au logement et au libre mouvement et à l'éducation. Tout en reconnaissant l'importance des défis auxquels nous sommes tous confrontés, notre combat contre le groupe terroriste Boko Haram ne doit pas nous affranchir de nos obligations morales et juridiques de veiller au respect des droits de l'homme et de l'état de droit. En effet, l'Union africaine a adopté une approche globale qui concilie le combat contre le terrorisme dans tous ses rouages et l'exigence de respect et de protection des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Cette approche est d'ailleurs celle inscrite par les États membres de l'Union africaine dans la Convention d'Alger sur la prévention et la lutte contre le terrorisme. Enfin, Madame la Présidente, la Commission de l'Union africaine renouvelle son appel à la communauté internationale, y compris tous les États africains, de joindre leurs efforts à tous les niveaux pour venir à bout de ce groupe terroriste, faire cesser les violations graves et massives des droits de l'homme.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Gulf Cooperation Council.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. يسرني أن ألقي هذا البيان باسم بعثة مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية لدى مكتب الأمم المتحدة بجنيف. السيد الرئيس، تؤكد بعثة مجلس التعاون على أهمية الحل السياسي في اليمن، وذلك وفقا للمبادرة الخليجية وآلياتها التنفيذية ومخرجات الحوار الوطني الشامل ومؤتمر الرياض والتنفيذ غير المشروط لقرار مجلس الأمن رقم 2216. إن عودة رئيس الجمهورية اليمنية وكامل الحكومة اليمنية إلى اليمن ومباشرتها العمل من عدن يعد مؤشرا يؤكد على بدء عودة الاستقرار لليمن، ويتطلب من مجلسكم الموقر دعما واضحا في الإسهام الدولي بإعادة كافة المؤسسات الرسمية لتعمل بكل طاقتها في اليمن وتعيد له استقراره من خلال السلطة الشرعية وتنفيذ قرارات مجلس الأمن ذات الصلة. السيد الرئيس، علينا جميعا أن نشيد هنا بالخطوات الإيجابية والجادة التي اتخذتها الحكومة الشرعية، ومنها تشكيل لجنة التحقيق الوطنية الخاصة بالتحقيق في الانتهاكات المختلفة، وهي الخطوة الأمثل نحو تعزيز العدالة وترسيخ دور المؤسسات القضائية المستقلة في اليمن. كما نشيد بالجهود الإنسانية التي قدمتها ولا تزال دول مجلس التعاون إلى اليمن، ونستنكر الانتهاكات التي تقوم بها ميليشيات الحوثيين وصالح بحق المدنيين وممارستهم غير المسؤولة لعرقلة وصول المساعدات الإنسانية إلى كافة أنحاء اليمن. وندعو المجتمع الدولي في هذا الإطار إلى تكثيف مساعداته الإنسانية من أجل رفع المعاناة عن الشعب اليمني. وفي الختام نؤكد بأن أي تقديم لمساعدة فنية وتقنية لبناء القدرات في مجال حقوق الإنسان في اليمن يجب أن يأتي بناء على طلبها وبشكل يلبي احتياجاتها والتزاماتها في هذا المجال. وشكرا للسيد الرئيس.
I thank you. The distinguished representative of Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Madam Vice President, my delegation would like to thank the High Commissioner for Human Rights for the oral updates pursuant to the Human Rights Council's Resolution 29/21. My delegation notes with appreciation the positive development in Myanmar and commitment of its government to promote and protect human rights, enhance socio-economic development, promote good governance and democratic societies, national consolidation and consolidation in the country. My delegation shares the views that a country-specific human rights resolution would not help us to address human rights issues. We firmly believe that the UPR mechanism is the appropriate forum to discuss and review a situation of human rights in any country on an equal basis. In this regard, my delegation calls on the international community to positively and constructively engage with and support Myanmar in her efforts to promote and protect human rights, enhance interfaith and intercommunal harmony, and realize democracy, national consolidation, and reconciliation in the country. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. The distinguished representative of Thailand, please.
Madam Vice President, the Thai delegation wishes to reiterate our full support to the High Commissioner and his office for the important role in providing technical assistance and capacity building upon the request of states concerned around the world. The mutual trust and confidence between the OHCHR and the states receiving technical assistance are the key elements to an effective, sustainable, and successful outcome. Technical assistance and capacity building provided should therefore not be imposed, but rather be agreed upon and respond to the needs of receiving states. We appreciate the activities of the office on the ground, working together and with the constructive engagement of states concerned to promote and protect human rights. As we attach high importance to this issue, we are tabling once again in this session the resolution on enhancement of technical cooperation and capacity building in the field of human rights, which will set the topic for the panel next year to focus on the rights of migrants. We hope for the widest support from this Council. Madam Vice President, on the oral update on Myanmar, Thailand believes that the root causes of the problems faced in Rakhine need to be addressed, which would also help prevent any repercussions in the area. In this regard, we believe in the commitment of the government of Myanmar and that the international community should remain constructively engaged with Myanmar and continue to provide support and technical assistance to help the country fulfill its human rights obligations. We wish Myanmar the best in their upcoming elections in the months ahead. I thank you.
Thank you. We shall now turn to our list of non-governmental organizations, and I would now give the floor to the Association for Defending Victims of Terrorism. They are not here. International Lesbian and Gay Association, not in the room. Americans for Democracy and Human Rights in Bahrain.
Señora Vicepresidenta, desde Americans for Democracy and Human Rights in Bahrain, the Bahrain Institute for Rights and Democracy and the European Center for Democracy and Human Rights, aplaudimos las conclusiones del primer programa técnico de cooperación y fomento entre el Reino de Arabia Saudita y la Oficina del Alto Comisionado. Pedimos a Arabia Saudita que renueve este acuerdo y continúe este programa de cooperación con el Alto Comisionado. Al comienzo de este programa en 2014, el gobierno saudí mostró su disponibilidad y sus ganas de colaborar con la Oficina del Alto Comisionado de los Derechos Humanos, para así mejorar su respeto por dichos derechos. Esto también significó una nueva oportunidad para construir instituciones dedicadas a la protección de los derechos humanos de forma duradera en Arabia Saudita. Teniendo en cuenta que estos esfuerzos constituyen un paso adelante, los objetivos del programa técnico subrayan la necesidad y las ganas de establecer una cooperación duradera y extensa en esta materia. El primer programa de cooperación con Arabia Saudita fue diseñado para acoger a unos 50 participantes, pero unos 200 acudieron. El presente acuerdo de cooperación pronto finalizará y el gobierno saudí no debería ignorar esta demanda de parte de sus ciudadanos ni abandonar los progresos realizados. En vez, debería aprovechar estos cambios y renovar dicho programa, así como extender su mandato e incluir a instituciones estatales y gubernamentales de derechos humanos. Además, el nuevo programa de cooperación con la Oficina del Alto Comisionado debería incluir garantías formales para la inclusión y protección de la sociedad civil en Arabia Saudita. Dichas garantías podrían formar sólidas bases para que la sociedad civil participe en tareas legislativas y gubernamentales, y así construir un espacio protegido para los defensores de los derechos humanos y poder desarrollar la sociedad civil.
Por lo tanto, hacemos un llamamiento al Gobierno saudí para que renueve y expanda su acuerdo de cooperación técnica y desarrollo con la Oficina del Alto Comisionado. Recomendamos arduamente que el nuevo acuerdo incluya una participación formal de la sociedad civil saudí, así como su protección, y urgimos al Reino de Arabia Saudita y a la Oficina del Alto Comisionado que extiendan los parámetros de dicha cooperación. Gracias.
Thank you. Eastern Sudan Women Development Organization. They are not here. World Environment and Resources Council. Not in the room. Iraqi Development Organization.
Madam Vice President, IDO, together with Americans for Democracy and Human Rights in Bahrain, the Yemeni Center for Human Rights, and Shiba for Democracy and Human Rights, would like to direct the Council's attention to the draft resolution on the human rights situation in Yemen that was tabled by the Kingdom of the Netherlands up until yesterday, and the opposing resolution that was tabled by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. As for the draft resolution tabled by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we are deeply concerned with its text, since its implementation is impractical and its scale devoid of neutrality. Therefore, we urge the Council to reject it, or open the floor for amendments that include an international independent commission of inquiry to be established. We would like to express our appreciation to the Kingdom of the Netherlands and all support and efforts in highlighting the serious violations of international human rights and humanitarian law in Yemen. However, we express our disappointment in the decision to withdraw the draft resolution tabled by the Netherlands and highlight our deep concern and reservations about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia current tabled resolution, because it acknowledges Hadi's Presidential Decree number 13, which calls for the establishment of a national commission that will not be up to par with international standards. And more importantly, there are no legal grounds for its establishment. The legislature, the judiciary, and the executive should facilitate implementation of these obligations, and since Hadi government is not a functioning government on the ground, it cannot carry out its duty of investigations in Yemen. Moreover, the National Commission is plagued with bias, as evidenced by the decree itself, which states that the purpose is to investigate crimes committed by certain local parties without any reference to the crimes being committed by the coalition led by Saudi Arabia. We bring to your attention that we are very keen on protecting the human rights of every person in Yemen, and therefore we are calling for an international independent investigation into crimes committed by all parties in Yemen to the conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. Arab Commission for Human Rights. They are not in the room. Bororo Social and Cultural Development Association.
Mr. President, my organization appreciates the effort of the independent expert on human rights situation in Sudan. Over the past 4 years in Sudan, Kordofan and Blue Hill Nail, government of Sudan has engaged in indiscriminate and targeted serial bombardment on civil areas. Hundreds of civilians have been killed and injured. Law enforcement agencies are involved in destroying civilian property, including village, school, mosques, and churches, and the authority continue to obstruct humanitarian assistance. Government forces and allied militia have been also implicated in alarming level of sexual violence. Ongoing attack on fighting have caused massive displacement in 2014. Over 170 people have been killed in September 2013 by the law enforcement agency and paramilitary forces in capital and other adjacent towns, who were protesting against the government policies. Several political leaders have been detained unlawfully. Media houses have been monitored by the government authorities and imposes censorship. Mr. President, my organization will always condemn the violation of human rights at any place of the world. Although Tripuri are the original inhabitant of Tripura, they are now minority by the illegal immigrant from Bangladesh, who control socio-economic, political, culture of indigenous population. Mr. President, my organization asks this Human Rights Council to impress upon the government who have failed to safeguard the right of their own citizens. We also appeal to the Council to provide them technical assistance with the help of other member states to work for betterment of their own citizens, including Government of India, who is voicing herself as signing India but not providing basic facilities to her own minority citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Human Rights Information and Training Center.
الرئيس، السيدات والسادة أعضاء المجلس، منذ ما يقارب العام قامت ميليشيات الحوثي وصالح بالانقلاب على السلطة الشرعية والسيطرة على مؤسسات ومقدرات الدولة بقوة السلاح، الأمر الذي أدى إلى تدهور حالة حقوق الإنسان وانهيار العملية السياسية المتمثلة بمخرجات الحوار ومسودات الدستور الجديد وتوسع النزاع المسلح إلى أكثر من 15 محافظة وتناميها الانتهاكات التي تطال المدنيين، حيث رصد التحالف اليمني لرصد انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان رغم العمل في الظروف الصعبة التي يعمل بها ما يقارب من 3047 حالة قتل من المدنيين و7350 جريح، إضافة إلى رصد انتهاكات خطيرة شملت تجنيد الأطفال والنساء في الميليشيات المسلحة والإخفاء القسري والتضييق على حرية الرأي والتعبير، حيث أغلقت كافة القنوات التلفزيونية والصحف والمواقع الإلكترونية التي تنتقد سياسة ميليشيات الحوثي وصالح. سيدي الرئيس، التحالف اليمني هنا يطالب الضغط نحو التنفيذ الكامل والغير مشروط لقرارات مجلس الأمن، وخصوصا 21/40/2014 والقرار 22/16/2015، وتقديم الدعم والمساعدات الفنية للجنة الوطنية للتحقيق بادعاءات انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان في اليمن منذ العام 2011. كما يطالب التحالف اليمني بحماية المدنيين ويحث المجتمع الدولي والمنظمات الدولية بتكثيف عمليات الإغاثة والمساعدة الإنسانية ولو في الحد الأدنى في مختلف المحافظات اليمنية. شكرا.
Thank you. Center for Human Rights and Peace Advocacy. They are not in the room. Institut International pour la Paix, la Justice et le Droit de l'Homme.
Okay. Honorable Mr. President, we thank you for giving us the floor. International Institute for Peace, Justice and Human Rights welcome the High Commissioner of Human Rights for technical assistance and recognize the value of using human rights-based approach in planning, implementation and monitoring of national policies. We emphasize that human rights action plans are key to strengthening the protection of human rights of vulnerable and marginalized groups, including migrants and people at risk of discrimination because of their sexual orientation. We would like to emphasize the need for action based on participation and inclusion, in addition to invaluable importance of involving civil society and national human rights institutions at all stages of national planning and decision-making. International Institute for Peace, Justice and Human Rights highlight the importance of cooperation on technical assistance to protect and promote human rights and is pleased to cooperate with GNRD, an international non-governmental organization with considerable experience and expertise in implementation of development policy and human rights. Finally, we stress the important role of human rights institutions in monitoring and supporting the implementation of policies and programs based on human rights and reaffirm our commitment in this area. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Liberation.
Thanks, Madam President. My organization welcomes the several UN committee reports on Indian country situation since 1997. The United Nations Human Rights Committee, while examining the third periodic report in India in 1997, held that India is in violation of Article 4.3 of the ICCPR. In this conclusions observation after examination of India's third periodic report, Human Rights Committee regretted that some parts of India have remained subject to declaration as disturbed area over many years. For example, the Armed Forces State Power Act has been applied throughout Manipur since 1980, and in these areas the state party is in fact using emergency powers without resolving the Article 4, paragraph 3 of the Covenant. Again, in 2007, the Committee of Elimination of Racial Discrimination, concluding observation of India's 15 to 19 periodic reports, UN recommended Armed Forces Special Power Act needs to be repealed as it gives gross human rights violation. Following the same years, the Committee of the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, concluding comments on the combined second and third periodic reports of India, also called for review of this act, as under this law violation of women are carried out with impunity. Mr. Vice President, besides, in November 2006, Iranian Nobel laureate Shirin Ebadi visited my sister Ilham Sharmila Sanu, who has been fasting for 15 years to repeal this military law in democracy India. Shirin Ebadi said that if anything towards happen to Ilham Sharmila, Parliament, the executive, the court, the armed forces and the media would be responsible for it. And our organization urging to fulfill the technicality of the recommendation of UN bodies to repeal this army law. Thank you, Mr. President.
World Barua Organization.
Mr. President, my organization welcomes the report of independent expert on Sudan. Armed conflicts in several Sudanese states continue with devastating effects on civilians. Heavy death rate of casualties of unarmed civilians and injuries, sexual violence against women and girls, destruction of civilian property, and hundreds of thousands of civilians fled from their houses. In September 2013, Sudanese security forces killed more than 170 people in the capital and the other main towns, repeatedly and violently suppressed protesters demonstrating against government's policies killing, political activists detained on a regular basis by the state authorities, suppressed civil societies group and censored the media. President Omar al-Bashir, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court for the crimes in Darfur, were re-elected in 2015 in a poll that did not meet standards for free and fair election. Mr. President, it is not the situation in Sudan only. The similar situation is being faced by the northeastern population of India also, who are being suppressed by the local law authority and forced by the authority to leave their houses, as the government of the India demolishing their houses in the names of development. My organization condemns any acts of violence against civilians. I would like to urge this August Council to impress upon the government who are involved in suppressing their own citizens and requested to this Council to take necessary measures to safeguard the rights of civilian populations, including the Northeast India. I thank you.
Thank you. Civicus. Not in the room. Marriage Foundation for Peace and Development.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for opening the debate on the deteriorated situation of human rights in a number of countries, as it gives us opportunities to shed light on new and ongoing violations, and also to try and stop or reduce these acts by different parties. We all know that the minorities in Myanmar and South Africa are suffering because little or no protection is provided to them from the governments. On the contrary, these minorities are subjected to violent acts by security personnel and other government agencies. Marriage Foundation Peace and Development recommends these two countries should be given priority attention from all related bodies of the Council. And investigation committee is not enough. The UN staff working in these fields are aware of what is going on a daily basis. In view of this alarming situation, we urge you as a matter of urgency to delegate and send human rights experts to these countries to raise awareness of the importance of implementing all aspects of the international human rights law. The government agencies need to be trained to defend and protect and not attack civilians, especially those from vulnerable minorities in the two countries. Capacity building is an essential step too, and that includes technical assistance to the governmental staff working in the field to respect the rights of the minorities, to prevent them and to guarantee their basic rights. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Commission to study the Organization of Peace. Not in the room. United Nations Watch.
Thank you, Madam President. The UN Watch is deeply concerned by the human rights abuses committed by Boko Haram and the Islamic State throughout West Africa and the Middle East, as documented by two reports before us. Boko Haram, an Islamic extremist terrorist group, is most known for kidnapping schoolgirls, of whom many have never been found. In addition, they enlist young girls whom they radicalize in order to commit suicidal terrorist attacks. For example, in August of this year, one 14-year-old girl killed herself and 5 others, wounding 41 in a crowded bus station in Damaturu, Nigeria. In Yobe State, Nigeria, June of this year, a 12-year-old girl killed 10 people in an open-air market. Other suicide attacks have taken place in mosques and colleges. Boko Haram has further aligned itself with the mission and ideology of the Islamic State. In Iraq, honor remains a permissible defense for violence against women, allowing fatalities of many hundreds of women by honor killings every year. ISIS has imposed strict regulations on women wherein they must be fully covered and accompanied by a man in public, yet girls and women are still targeted for sexual violence and sexual slavery. Girls younger than 15 and 16 are taken from their home and separated from their sisters and mothers before they are raped and sold as wives, naked in open-air markets, reminiscent of the darkest ages of humanity. Many of these girls come from the Yazidi and Christian minorities, which require the urgent protection of the international community. We urge the Human Rights Council to condemn these horrific atrocities and to protect the innocent victims of Boko Haram and ISIS, many of whom are now knocking on Europe's door for protection. These abuses against women and girls shock the conscience of humankind. It is unacceptable that they are so prevalent in our world today. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. International movement against all forms of discrimination and racism.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We welcome the OHCHR report on Boko Haram and its recommendation. However, we regret that the populations in Nigeria and its neighboring countries continue to be subjected to horrific abuses such as massacres, torture, abduction, slavery, and forced recruitment. Women and girls are particularly at risk and are constantly targeted. While last week the Nigerian government announced the liberation of more than 200 people in Borno State, hundreds of women are still in captivity. They endure extremely severe and widespread violation of their rights, including sexual slavery, sexual violence, and forced pregnancy. We are very concerned by the numerous cases of captive women and girls giving birth or having miscarriages in extremely difficult and degrading conditions. In addition, for many women kidnapped, their suffering did not end when delivered by government forces. Indeed, once back in their communities, they suffer from great stigmatization, making them unwilling to speak about abuses they have endured. To conclude, it is imperative to recall the fate of the Chibok girls kidnapped in April 2014. More than a year after their abduction, most of them remain missing. We once again call upon the Nigerian government as well as its neighbors to protect civilians against Boko Haram and restore peace and religious harmony in their countries. The government should adopt the following measures: ensure the safety of civilians while countering Boko Haram, take immediate measures to protect women and girls, including psychosocial counseling and medical care, offer sufficient protection and remedies to victims, and cooperate with special procedures, especially the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women. Finally, we urge the international community to support Nigeria and its neighbors in the implementation of the report's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Society Studies Center. They are not in the room. Cameroon Youths and Students Forum for Peace.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We are pleased to give this oral update on the situation in Myanmar after the valid adoption of resolution done by the Human Rights Council, as a forward step to put an end to the incitement of hatred against Muslims in Myanmar, and to ensure the protection of human rights of all persons in Myanmar, including the Rohingya Muslims. On this occasion, we call upon the government of Myanmar to take all necessary measures to prevent the discrimination and exploitation, including through trafficking of Rohingya Muslims and others, by addressing the root causes compelling them to be more vulnerable and exposed to such acts, and urges the government of Myanmar to protect places of worship belonging to all religions. Madam Vice President, we do believe in the profound importance of the protection of children in conflict areas, as they form the root source of a fruitful future community. Myanmar has been suffering from the underage military recruitment years ago. 3 years since the UN signed the Joint Action Plan to end the recruitment and use of children with Myanmar government in June 2012. Children continue to be present in the ranks of the Myanmar Army and the Border Guard forces, as well as armed opposition groups. We strictly call upon taking urgent measures by the Myanmar government to ensure the Army complies with international standards regarding minors military recruitment, and release all those recruited under 18 within their ranks, along with issuing and dissemination of directives on the prohibition of the use of children to all military units. We do urge the government to ratify without delay the optional protocol to the Convention on the Right of the Child on the involvement of the children in armed conflict. Finally, we do greet the commitment of the government of Myanmar to continue on its path of political, economic and democratic reform and encourage its continued efforts towards national reconciliation and the promotion and protection of human rights.
Center for Reproductive Rights.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Center for Reproductive Rights remains extremely concerned by the human rights violations and abuse targeting women and girls in Nigeria and neighboring countries perpetrated by Boko Haram. There has been a systematic and definite pattern of targeting women and girls. This pattern has included extremely severe and widespread violations of the rights of women and girls, ranging from torture, cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment, abductions on a massive scale, sexual slavery, sexual and reproductive violence, forced so-called marriages, and forced pregnancy. The severity and scale of these violations mean that they could amount to crimes against humanity. Many survivors of these horrific experiences are now pregnant by their rapists. It is vital that the authorities ensure that every person who has been responsible for such crimes will be held to account in the court of law. It is as vital that all women and girls affected by the ongoing conflict with Boko Haram have access to obstetric and antenatal care, access to contraceptive information and services, access to safe abortion care, especially for women survivors of rape and sexual abuse, and access to counseling free from discrimination, coercion and violence. Lack of provision of these services within a human rights framework would only re-victimize women and girls affected by this conflict, with dire consequences on their rights and lives. We therefore reiterate the call made by the High Commissioner to urge the Nigerian authorities to extend the interpretation of the current regulations on abortion to go beyond the protection of the woman's life, including in cases of rape, and to preserve the health of the women. Mr. High Commissioner, what could the Human Rights Council do to ensure accountability for victims and survivors of sexual and reproductive violence, and to ensure women have access to SRH information and services in conflict and post-conflict settings? Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. International Federation for Human Rights Leagues.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Since 26 March 2015, when a Saudi-led coalition launched an air campaign against the rebel Houthi forces in Yemen, parties to the conflict have committed serious violations of international law, including indiscriminate airstrikes and the firing of weapons into civilian populated areas. The High Commissioner for Human Rights has expressed grave concern at the high number of civilian casualties and informed the Human Rights Council that his office had received information suggesting that indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks were being used on densely populated areas. Some of these violations may amount to war crimes. In light of the failure of Saudi Arabia, other coalition members and the Yemeni government to investigate allegations of violations of international law, as well as lack of accountability measures by other parties to the conflict, we call on the Council to establish an international investigating mechanism to establish the facts, collect and conserve information related to violations and abuses, and identify those responsible with a view to ensuring accountability. Madam Vice President, in South Sudan, the culture of impunity has fueled violence and enabled the perpetration of serious crimes for almost 2 years. Accountability is long overdue. We reiterate our call for the swift establishment of a credible, independent hybrid court to try crimes against international law committed during the conflict and that meets international standards of fairness and impartiality as provided in the peace agreement. While we welcome the decision of the African Union Peace and Security Council to release the report of its Commission of Inquiry, we regret delays in its publications, which for too long sent the message that justice and accountability were not a priority. Victims of human rights violations, many of whom provided information to the Commission of Inquiry at great personal risk, deserve to see the report's findings and recommendations, which may also prove important for future investigators. We hope that the report, together with mechanisms for transitional justice, will constitute the basis of a roadmap towards justice and long-lasting peace and security in South Sudan. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Human Rights Watch.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. 6 months ago, the Council adopted a deeply flawed, one-sided resolution on the human rights situation in Iraq, failing to address the necessity of holding pro-government militias accountable for the atrocities committed in fighting ISIS. The resolution then ignored the conclusions of the OHCHR report, and at this very session of the Council, there is simply no resolution on the table. However, the violations that would have justified the Council's action have continued unabated. Recent research found that Iraqi government-backed militias carried out widespread destructions of homes and shops around the city of Tikrit in March and April, after the withdrawal of ISIS from the area. Hezbollah battalion and the League of Righteous Force abducted more than 200 Sunni residents, including children, near Al-Dor, and at least 160 of those abducted remain unaccounted for. By turning a blind eye into these abuses, the Council failed its mandate to act to prevent human rights and IHL violations in Iraq. Iraqi authorities should urgently discipline and appropriately prosecute militia commanders and any complicit security force personnel involved in destroying homes and shops and committing other crimes. On Yemen, the Council is repeating the same mistake. Since it adopted its last resolution last year, all parties have committed serious violations. The Saudi-led coalition has conducted indiscriminate airstrikes and killed and wounded scores of civilians. Coalition members have not investigated alleged violations. Houthis and allied forces have also repeatedly violated IHL, including by launching rockets indiscriminately, mistreating persons in custody, and recruiting children to their forces. It is regrettable that the only consensus possible at this Council seems to be its failure for the establishment of an independent international mechanism to investigate abuses by all sides in Yemen. Such a mechanism would have been crucial to confront continued impunity, but also to send a clear message to all parties that they should respect their international obligations to protect civilians. An increasing desperate Yemeni population should not be ignored by the world's preeminent human rights body. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Cairo Institute for Human Rights Studies welcomes the High Commissioner report on Yemen. We are extremely concerned with the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation in the country since July 2014. We are also alarmed with the escalation of violations and abuses of international human rights law and alleged violations of international humanitarian law by parties to the conflict as described in the report. Houthi militias as well as the international coalition forces and anti-Houthis armed groups have repeatedly violated IHL by launching rockets indiscriminately into civilian populated areas. Houthis should end arbitrary detention of civilians and recruitment of children for their forces. Last Monday, a wedding party was reportedly hit by a Saudi-led coalition airstrike, allegedly killing at least 130 civilians, including a large number of women and children, only in one night. To date, more than 2,300 civilians were killed in the conflict. Almost 80% of the Yemeni population are in need of humanitarian aid. As a result of the coalition's blockade of naval traffic, flow of goods such as medical supplies and food has almost stopped, leading Yemen to the humanitarian crisis it is facing now. We remind the Council of the High Commissioner's recommendation to establish an international independent investigative mechanism to look into violations committed by all parties to the conflict. We strongly believe that such mechanism is the only way to deter further violations. Since 2011, previous initiatives to establish National Commission of Inquiries in Yemen have failed due to the inability of government and of absence of political will to enforce truth and justice. Madam Vice President, impunity and lack of accountability feeds this conflict. Regretfully, the current draft resolution tabled before the Council seems to avoid this very important recommendation by the High Commissioner. If the draft passes as such, it would signal that the Council has failed in its responsibility to address serious violations and protect civilians in Yemen. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Advocates for Human Rights.
Madam Vice President, the Advocates for Human Rights welcomes the High Commissioner's summary report under Item 2 and supports a focus on technical assistance and capacity building options for integrating human rights into national policies. As discussed at the panel during the 28th session pursuant to Resolution 2726, successful mainstreaming of human rights depends on, among other things, good laws and the enforcement of those laws. To create a good law, states must understand the best practices that need to be included. At the Advocates for Human Rights, we see this daily in our work with global partners to monitor laws on violence against women and drive change. Laws set the foundation for victim safety and offender accountability, and evaluation and monitoring are critical to ensuring that the laws as written incorporate best practices, that they are properly implemented, and that the laws do not result in unintended harms. In our evaluations, we check whether a law contains important elements that focus on victim safety and offender accountability, including good remedies such as issuing and enforcing resisting orders, and a recognition that domestic violence is a crime against the state, not just against the individual, and that these crimes must be publicly prosecuted. From our work on domestic violence, we see firsthand that adopting a law is not enough. Laws cannot protect victims or hold offenders accountable if they are not implemented or monitored to determine whether there are unanticipated harmful results. In Nepal, for example, the Domestic Violence Act emphasizes reconciliation of victims and perpetrators of domestic violence. Focusing on reconciliation, however, is a practice that actually is harmful to victims and allows perpetrators to act with impunity. The Advocates for Human Rights encourages members of the Human Rights Council to urge member states to work with civil society and incorporate best practices into their laws. We urge member states to regularly monitor the implementation of their laws to successfully mainstream human rights, in particular a woman's right to be free from violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Agence Internationale pour le Développement. They are not present. Lawyers' Rights Watch Canada.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, Excellencies. Lawyers' Rights Watch Canada and the Asian Legal Resource Centre appreciate the High Commissioner's emphasis in several reports that states must ensure a protective and enabling environment in law and practice for civil society and put an end to impunity for violations against defenders. Judicial harassment is a dominant method for silencing human rights defenders and civil society actors in numerous states, including retaliation against lawyers and other defenders in Bangladesh, Cambodia, China, Malaysia, Myanmar, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and others. In Thailand, authorities have participated in the abuse of criminal defamation laws to prosecute defenders who report on rights violations by Thailand's military authorities or businesses. Since Thailand's May 2014 coup d'etat, the unelected military government has brought military court proceedings against at least 700 civilians, including rights defenders and democracy activists, to silence their legitimate exercise of freedoms of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. Military courts lack independence and impartiality and other fair trial standards. Despite Thai authorities' statements to the contrary, Thailand's military courts do not guarantee the same rights as those applied by civilian courts. Since May 2014, military rulers have arbitrarily detained at least 900 people in incommunicado detention for hours or days of so-called attitude adjustment, without charges and without access to family, lawyers, or courts. There have been allegations of torture or ill treatment. We ask Council to urge all states to end all reprisals against defenders and civil society, and to urge Thailand to cease using military tribunals to prosecute civilians, and to adhere to the Convention Against Torture, and to restore democratic rule through free and fair elections. We are also very interested in any OHCHR plans for technical assistance and capacity building on these issues. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Global Network for Rights and Development.
Madam Vice President, the Global Network for Rights and Development thanks to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights for the report on the situation in Yemen. We would like to draw your attention on the issue of child military recruitment in the Yemeni conflict. As UNICEF reports, the recruitment and use of children in conflicts rose sharply during the conflict after the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen. The United Nations and human rights organizations have reported a number of cases of armed children manning checkpoints, being present on armed vehicles or in trial militias, as well as guarding buildings. The recruitment is done by government and non-state armed groups. The recruitment and use of children as soldiers is one of the 6 grave violations against children in conflict situations. The Convention on the Rights of the Child expressly prohibits the engagement of children below the age of 15 years in direct hostilities. GNRD is concerned with the widespread use of children for military purposes and impact on the physical and mental development of children. We call on the Council to stop child military recruitment, pressuring on conflicting parties to respect the international human rights and children's rights laws. We welcome the action plan signed by the Yemeni government and United Nations to end child military recruitment. It is vital to reform national laws to ensure that children's rights are secured in national legislation and issue military orders that prohibit the recruitment and use of children. We also believe that more targeted measures should be carried out to make parties who commit violations against children in conflict situations accountable for their actions and bring them to justice. Finally, global humanitarian funding for children in conflicts must be increased, and more release and reintegration programs must be implemented for them. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Africa speaks.
Madam Vice President, Africa Speaks thank this distinguished panel for the floor, and we thank today's speaker for such an informative and productive discussion. Africa Speaks welcomes the High Commissioner's most recent report on the situation in Yemen, and today we would like to highlight a number of points pertaining to this continuing tragedy. As is laid out in the High Commissioner's report, the humanitarian situation in Yemen has deteriorated to the point of catastrophe over the past 7 months. Since the escalation of violence between the Houthis and the Saudi Arabian-led military coalition, it's now estimated that over 2,000 civilians have been killed and another 4,000 wounded. Furthermore, while an estimated 20.4 million people in Yemen require access to basic health care, food and water, attempts by international bodies to deliver aid to those in need have been thwarted by fighters on both sides of the conflict. Naval and land blockades have obstructed dozens of shipments and further exacerbated the crisis, demonstrating a gross indifference to the lives of millions of innocent civilians and international humanitarian law. Africa Speaks is deeply concerned about a number of blatant human rights violations that have been committed in Yemen territory, and call on all parties to halt hostilities against civilians and respect both international humanitarian and human rights law. Finally, Africa Speaks call on the international community to remain vigilant and aware of the continuing atrocities in Yemen, and to quickly conduct independent investigation into all human rights abuses so that the perpetrators may be brought to justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Salam Foundation.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. As-Salam Foundation, together with the American for Democracy and Human Rights in Bahrain, the Institute for Right and Democracy, and the Bahrain Center for Human Rights, would like to express our serious concern for the government of Bahrain continued lack of cooperation with this Council, its mechanism, and other United Nations bodies. We are particularly concerned with the government's ongoing attitude of non-commitment with the technical cooperation with the Office of High Commissioner. We note that during the 28th session of this Council, the government of Bahrain particularly committed to the signing technical cooperation agreement with OHCHR. While recognizing a public renewal of its commitment recently, we are disappointed that such call has been repeatedly followed by Bahrain deferral of formal commitment. This poses a great concern for the deteriorating situation in the ground and requires the Council serious and immediate attention. We reiterate the need for a robust program of action which should be transparent and compatible with the time-bound action planned for the government reform in the areas of legislation, judicial administration, management of public gathering, and national human rights institutes. We are also troubled by government denial of access for special procedures since 2006, and remain concerned with the government's continued lack of regard for the UPR process. We have observed a little effort to address the serious human rights concerns raised by member states of this Council in 2012. 7 mandates currently maintain country visit requests to Bahrain. We therefore call the government of Bahrain to formally committed to technical cooperation with OHCHR, which should be administered through a permanent country office with a full reporting mandate. We also call on the government of Bahrain to grant immediate and unfiltered access to all special procedure mandate holders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
European Union of Public Relations. Not in the room. Agence pour le droit de l'homme.
Madam Vice President, our organization welcomes this opportunity to thank the independent expert on the situation in Sudan for his comprehensive and thorough report, which aimed at identifying the technical assistance and capacity building needs of the Sudan that would enable the state to fulfill its human rights obligations. We would also like to express our optimism regarding the talks that the independent expert held with the senior government officials and other representatives of civil society organizations, in which they exchanged valuable information on the human rights situation in the country. The impact of unilateral coercive measures on the enjoyment of human rights played an important role in these talks. Sudan is still suffering the devastating effects of the economic sanctions imposed by the United States since 1997, they being particularly harmful for women and children. It's highly important to state that the government advocated for the lifting of sanctions by the international community, seeking instead an international engagement to a broad program of technical assistance for the country. Sudan's economy was already in very great difficulty, as it is today, yet sanctions made matters even worse. Despite this unfavorable economic situation, the government has proven a determined commitment with the strengthening and the implementation of human rights protection policies. Thus, we strongly condemn the sanctions of the U.S. and call upon the country to stop these devastating measures which are against peaceful international principles of diplomacy and do not contribute to the freedom and democracy development in Sudan. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Iranian Elite Research Center.
Madam Vice President, I am pleased to provide this oral statement on behalf of the Iraq. We would like to show our sincere appreciation to the Council adoption of a resolution condemning the systemic gross violations of human rights and grave abuses committed against Rohingyas, and urging the government of Myanmar to take the necessary measure to address the spread of discrimination and prejudice against Muslims. A step which conveys the strong support of the international community, particularly the member state of the HRC, to the content of this important resolution. Iraq recalls upon the government of Myanmar to ensure accountability and to end impunity for all violation of human rights, including in particular against Muslims, by undertaking a full, transparent and independent investigation into reports of all violation of international human rights law and international humanitarian law. We do urge the government, and in conjunction with the international community and in accordance with international law, to ensure the return of all refugees and persons displaced from their homes, including Muslims. In addition, we do question the implementation of the requested cooperation with all parties by the government and the scope of access of humanitarian assistance to affected persons and communications. And in this regard, the government's implementation of the various cooperation agreements not yet implemented made between the authorities of Myanmar and the international community for the distribution of humanitarian aid to all affected areas, including Rakhine State, without any discrimination. Madam President, the situation today in Myanmar is controversial, and it should be in one of our top priorities. As an international community, the provision of its urgent and the ultimate needs, as well as carrying out resettlement and the rehabilitation for the affected people. And as a constructive and cooperative support, Iraq encourages more international contribution to the relief efforts as emergency humanitarian aid, and as insist on. I thank you.
Thank you. Kiam Rehabilitation Center for Victims of Torture.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحن في مركز الخيام لتأهيل ضحايا التعذيب والائتلاف المدني اليمني لرصد جرائم العدوان. نؤكد لكم بأن الشعب اليمني كان ولا زال بأمس الحاجة لوقوف المجتمع الدولي معه، وخاصة في موضعكم يومنا هذا، وهو بناء القدرات والمساعدات الفنية والتقنية. إن تحركات هولندا منذ بداية هذه الدورة كان لها الأثر الكبير في الشارع اليمني، الذي كان يطمح إلى تشكيل لجنة تحقيقات دولية بشأن الجرائم البشعة التي يرتكبها النظام السعودي وحلفائه. إلا أننا أصبنا بخيبة أمل بعد التدخلات والنفوذ السعودي الذي استطاع أن يملي رغباته على الكل. ونريد هنا أن نعرف من السفير الهولندي عن سبب سحب المشروع. إن قدرات وإمكانيات وتقنية أي لجنة وطنية للتحقيق بشأن الجرائم في اليمن غير متوفرة على الإطلاق، بالإضافة إلى أن من قام بتشكيلها متهم أساسا في هذه الجرائم، ولا تستطيع أن تحقق هذه اللجنة الوطنية في جرائم العدوان السعودي، لأن نطاق اختصاصها لا يتعدى خارج إطار الجمهورية اليمنية. ولكن ما تريده السعودية ينفذ ويمرر على أشلاء ودماء الأبرياء الذين يتساقطون يوميا. لقد أصبح لدى الشعب اليمني قناعة بأن دورات مجلس حقوق الإنسان تبدأ حقوقية بامتياز وتختتم سياسية بامتياز. إن الشعب اليمني لم يعد بحاجة إليكم، لأنه فقد الأمل في كل مشاريع الأمم المتحدة ومكوناتها لعدم المصداقية. إذا كان السفير السعودي يتباهى اليوم في أروقة المجلس باتفاقه مع السفير الهولندي، فإن الشعب اليمني يتباهى بتاريخه وأصوله التي امتدت في أقطاب العالم، وهو قادر على أن يجتاز مرحلة العدوان بقدراته وإمكانياته التاريخية وثقته في العدالة الإلهية قبل العدالة الأممية المنعدمة أساسا. حفظ الله اليمن وشعبه العظيم، وشكرا.
Thank you. International Humanist and Ethical Union.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The extreme cruelty and violence we are witnessing in Iraq is so revolting and inhuman that it highlights the Council's relative impotence to act in the face of such brutality. It also reminds us of our failure to help foster a human rights climate in the affected region. For this violence is not without context. We might recall that prior to the debauched brutality of ISIS against homosexual men, in Iraq such men were subjected to death threats and torture. Previous to ISIS's sexual enslavement of women, the Iraqi parliament drafted a law that sought to legalize rape, prohibit women leaving home without their husband's permission, and legalize marriage for 9-year-old girls. The Council's failure to do more in the face of ISIS is one thing, and indeed, as recognized by the High Commissioner, its resources are severely limited. But its failure to speak out in defense of universal human rights in the face of such demonstrative denial by ISIS is quite another. Its words have normative force, and it owes the Iraqis to use them wisely. Of course, no representative in this forum would say it's okay to throw a man off a building because he's gay, but they would and have expressed their abhorrence of LGBT rights. Of course, no representative in this forum would say it's okay to force a woman into sexual slavery, but they would and have denied the existence of marital rape and continue to include a country with gender apartheid as a member. The Council needs to say with one clear voice, we are all equal agents in possession of the same human rights, regardless of our gender, regardless of what we believe and whom we love. It needs to promote clear universalism, because without that there is a very slippery slope. A slope that more young gay men would be pushed off to meet their death. Thank you.
Thank you. Association des jeunes pour l'agriculture de Mali.
Vanakkam, Mr. President. The resolution adopted on Sri Lanka is missing the victim-centered approach and will undermine the justice to Tamils. Tamils are still living under the heavy military presence in their homeland. The Sri Lankan military, whose some of the terrible crimes are covered in the OISL report, is colonized the Tamil homeland. Neither US nor India, who has the immense influence in the region, come forward to pressurize the new Sri Lankan regime to deliver justice to Tamils, or to the least support demand for demilitarization. Rather, these countries are enhancing military cooperation with the new Sri Lankan regime will only undermine the justice for Tamils. Role of India, US, UK, Pakistan and China in the genocidal war is well established. Beyond doubt should also be taken into consideration while delivering solution. No one can expect a free, fair and independent investigation can happen in Sri Lanka when the victims are still being terrorized by the brutal military. It's my duty to remind the Council that the Sri Lankan forces were accused of war crimes in Haiti UN peace mission for sexually exploiting children, and they also involved in the killing of nearly 530 Indian Tamil fishermen from India. Understanding the reality, Tamil Nadu, where 77 million Tamils live in India, brought out a resolution in its legislative assembly that calls for international independent investigation on crime of genocide and a referendum among the Tamils to establish their sovereignty. Protests by all sections of people occupy the streets of Tamil Nadu today, demanding international investigation on crime of genocide. Tamil grassroots organizations, civil society, some of the major political parties in Tamil National Alliance in Tamil Eelam have rejected the investigation in any form that involves Sri Lankan regime. The Northern Provincial Council and elected body of Eelam Tamils have also passed a resolution after the regime change that there need to be an international independent investigation for genocide on Tamils. So, the majority of the Tamil representatives from grassroots expressed their demand for international investigation for genocide. This demand is emanating from the cycle of violence by Sri Lankan regime from 1948 and their receptive politics. The present President Maithripala Sirisena, the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, and the proposed Reconciliation Commission head and the former President Chandrika are all committed heinous crimes against Tamils and can find some of the crimes listed.
Alliance Creative Community Project.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. In Sri Lanka, 146,679 Tamils count as unaccounted. 90,000 war widows, a minimum of 25,000 war orphans, 160,000 houses destroyed according to UN estimates. 7,000 square kilometers of land belonging to the Tamils is under the control of the army. The UN-appointed three-member panel of experts put the number of dead as 40,000. The UN review panel of Charles Petrie put the number of dead as 70,000. The north of Sri Lanka counts as one of the most militarized zones in the world, despite the civil war ending more than 6 years ago. Thousands of displaced are yet to be resettled. Many innocent Tamils are still languishing in unknown detention centers. There's no mention of international guarantee of witness protection, given the great history of impunity, mass graves, disappearances, torture, rape, murder, and white van abductions. Since 1948, the Sri Lankan government has not honored any commitment towards the Tamils. The US-sponsored resolution of March 2014 wanted an international investigation. Now, climbing down from that position amounts to betrayal of faith imposed by the victims. The government of Sri Lanka has categorically stated that they will not demilitarize. Still, that has been included in the present resolution. As the High Commissioner put it, the design of any truth-seeking and accountability mechanism must be through a process of genuine, informed and participatory consultation, especially with victims and their family. In this quest for justice, we request the international community not to be cheated once again by the government of Sri Lanka and urge the Human Rights Council to press for a robust, hybrid, impartial mechanism which would give solace to the victims and impose confidence in the working of the UN systems. Thank you.
Thank you. International Lawyers Organization. They are not present. Save the Children International.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. We welcome OHCHR report on the right to participate in public affairs in the context of human rights law. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child provides children with the right to participate in public affairs. Consultations with almost 2,700 children in 71 countries confirm that children want to engage in public decision-making and accountability. They felt strongly that their insights could help governments to make better decisions. Many states have taken measures to ensure that children's views are heard in public affairs. ICTs also help children access information, express their views, and engage in decision-making. Despite this, children's voices continue to be marginalized in public affairs, and their opinions are often less valued than those of adults. When opportunities for public participation of children exist, children's meaningful engagement is often hampered by lack of access to information that makes sense to them. Children's associations, where they can share experiences and take joint action, are important for children to exercise their citizenship. However, children often encounter legal and administrative challenges in forming their own organizations, including registration. To ensure that children can exercise their right to participate in public affairs, we call on Member States to guarantee children's rights to freedom of expression, association, peaceful assembly, and access to information, online and offline, in law and practice. The legal framework should be conducive to the establishment of children's associations. Put in place child-friendly, meaningful, age-appropriate and safe formal mechanisms where children, including the most vulnerable, can influence public affairs. Provide children with child-sensitive, age-appropriate and timely information. Sensitize public officials about children's rights, including their right to participate in public affairs. States can build on emerging good practices on how to involve children in public affairs. In Kenya, for example, Save the Children's work with the government to support children across all counties to participate in policy making through the Children's Assembly. In Bangladesh, Save the Children supports a child-friendly local governance program where children are directly involved in local government planning and budgeting for children.
Thank you. Association Burkinabé pour la survie de l'enfance.
Thank you, Madam President. We welcome the report of the Office of High Commissioner for the Human Rights Inquiry on Sri Lanka released on 16 September 2015. The report is to date the most comprehensive fact-finding report on the atrocities that have been committed in Sri Lanka between February 2002 and November 2011, the temporal mandate of the OISL. We deliver that war crimes, crime against humanity and genocide took place, and the structural genocide is continuing under the jackpot of the Sri Lankan army, which is part of the Sri Lankan state. As stated in the OSL report, that due to the horrific level of violations and abuses, the High Commission should refer the report to the International Criminal Court. The manner in which the system of accountability is created will be the test of the credibility of the UNHCR system. The international community and the government of Sri Lanka, who are talking about the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of Sri Lanka, in which the most important is the protection of the people. Where stands the sovereignty when the state itself has been responsible for the major crimes described in the report? Sri Lanka is a state party to 9 of the international human rights treaties and the UN Charter. Therefore, Sri Lanka is bound to respect, protect and promote and fulfill the rights of all people. But being signatories of all these treaties, and as the report's unequivocal finding that a criminal investigation into a serious crime committed cannot be taken through a domestic mechanism. The High Commissioner in his yesterday's speech said that even after the new regime came to power, there was at least 14 cases of torture on which the victims are Tamils. As Sri Lankan are signatories of the international treaties, the only solution for justice for the victims will be through an independent international mechanism, as the Tamils have been victims since 67 years and are still waiting for justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Association Mauritaine pour la promotion des droits.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to speak in my mother tongue, Tamil. வணக்கம். ஐநா மனித உரிமை சபை இலங்கை தீவில் இன்றும் நடைபெற்று வருகின்ற பெருங்குற்றங்கள் குறித்து தொடர்ச்சியான கரிசனை கொண்டிருப்பதற்கு முதற்கண் பாதிக்கப்பட்டவர்கள் சார்பில் எனது நன்றிகள். இலங்கை தீவில் இடம்பெற்ற போர் ஒரு தேசிய இனப்பிரச்சனையில் இருந்து ஆரம்பமானது. இந்த தேசிய இனப்பிரச்சனையின் மூல காரணமே அங்கு பிரித்தானியாவால் உருவாக்கப்பட்ட ஒற்றையாட்சி அரசு. தமிழ் தேசிய இனத்திற்கு சம உரிமை மறுக்கப்பட்டே இந்த ஒற்றையாட்சி அரசு உருவாக்கப்பட்டது. தமிழ் மக்களின் ஜனநாயக அங்கீகாரம் இல்லாமலே இந்த ஒற்றையாட்சி அரசு உருவானது. இதற்கு பிரித்தானியா பொறுப்பு கூற வேண்டும். இந்த ஒற்றையாட்சி அரசு 1972 ஸ்ரீலங்காவாக தமிழ் மக்களின் அங்கீகாரமின்றி தன்னை ஒரு இன அழிப்பு அரசாக மாற்றிக்கொண்டது. இந்த இனவாத போக்குக்கும் பண்பாட்டு இன அழிப்புக்கும் எதிராகவே தந்தை செல்வா போராடினார். இறுதியில் அவர் தமிழரின் கோரிக்கையாக இனிமேல் சமஷ்டியை முன்வைக்க முடியாது என்று முடிவெடுத்தார். இன்று ஒரு பெரும் இன அழிப்பை சந்தித்த பின்னரும் மீண்டும் நமது அரசியல் தலைமைகள் சமஷ்டி குறித்து பேசும் நிலைக்கு மீண்டும் சர்வதேச சக்திகளே காரணமாயிருக்கின்றன. ஆனால் அதை கூட நாங்கள் கோரிக்கையாக முன்வைக்க முடியாதவர்களாக அடக்கப்படுகின்றோம். அடிப்படை பிரச்சனைக்கு தீர்வு காண வழிவகுக்காமல் பக்க விளைவுகளை பற்றியே இங்கு அனைவரும் பேசுவது எமக்கு ஆழ்ந்த கவலையை தருகின்றது. பிரித்தானியாவின் பங்கை இப்போது அமெரிக்கா எடுத்துள்ளது. அருகில் உள்ள இந்தியாவும் இன அழிப்பு ஸ்ரீலங்காவுக்கே முண்டு கொடுக்கின்றது. இன அழிப்பு போர் நடந்து முடிந்தும் பாதிக்கப்பட்ட நாம் தொடர்ந்தும் கட்டமைப்பு இன அழிப்புக்கு முகம் கொடுக்கின்றோம். இந்த நிலையில் தமிழர்களுக்கு தொடர்ந்து நடக்கப் போகும் கொடுமைகளுக்கு எல்லாம் ஸ்ரீலங்காவின் ஒற்றையாட்சி அரசுக்கு முட்டுக் கொடுக்கும் சர்வதேச சக்திகளே முழு பொறுப்பாளிகள் என்று பாதிக்கப்பட்ட மக்களின் சார்பில் இந்த மனித உரிமை சபையில் பணிவோடு பிரகடனம் செய்கின்றேன். கவலை கலந்த நன்றிகள்.
Thank you. Rencontre africaine pour la défense des droits de l'homme.
Madame la vice-présidente, la RADO tient tout d'abord à féliciter le Haut Commissariat pour son assistance technique aux pays qui traversent des difficultés dans le domaine des droits humains, et ce malgré le manque de ressources nécessaires lui permettant d'accomplir sa mission. Quand on vous aide à se laver le dos, il faudrait soi-même fournir un effort pour se laver le ventre, a dit le proverbe africain. L'assistance doit servir d'appoint à l'effort national des pays concernés en leur permettant de combler les déficits auxquels ils sont confrontés en matière de droits de l'homme. La RADO accorde une grande importance au rôle des commissions régionales des ONG et des institutions nationales dans l'élaboration et le suivi de la mise en œuvre des politiques et programmes fondés sur le respect des droits de l'homme à l'échelle nationale. Elle plaide en faveur de la mise sur pied d'une meilleure politique de coordination et cohérence dans la gestion des ressources qui sont allouées aux États en fonction des résultats obtenus. En ce qui concerne le Soudan, la RADDHO estime que ce pays doit figurer sur l'agenda du point 4 du Conseil compte tenu de l'ampleur de l'aggravation systématique des violations des droits de l'homme et du droit international humanitaire. La presse fait l'objet d'une censure drastique. Les journalistes et les défenseurs des droits de l'homme sont harcelés et menacés. Les autorités refusent toujours l'accès des zones en conflit aux agences humanitaires et de presse. La RADDHO est vivement préoccupée par la poursuite de la détérioration de la situation des droits de l'homme en Somalie, en Libye, en Irak, en Syrie, en Ukraine, au Yémen. Elle appelle la communauté internationale à s'investir davantage pour mettre un terme aux violences spirales dans ces pays. En conclusion, la RADDHO demande une assistance aux pays engagés dans la lutte contre Boko Haram pour garantir et assurer la sécurité des populations civiles dans les régions affectées, ainsi qu'à l'ouverture d'un bureau de haut commissariat au Sri Lanka. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you. Africa Culture International.
Honorable Vice President, the Framework Para 13 states effective national policies based on human rights align the priorities and goals of the state with the conditions for its population to enjoy all human rights. Unfortunately, the resource-rich land, Balochistan and its people have been treated differently. Balochistan holds a very important geostrategic location in the South Asia and can play a vital role for regional and international economic development, peace and security. Since 1948, the Pakistani state annexed Balochistan and opted a strategic policy of suppressing the people of Balochistan through violence, intimidation and violating all forms of human rights. The Islamic State is employing...
Please. We have a point of order from Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. My delegation strongly objects to the statement which is being made by this NGO. Let me remind this Council that we are discussing item 10, which is meant for technical cooperation and capacity building of states, not for naming and shaming countries. And also, the NGOs are not supposed to speak in violation of UN ECOSOC Resolution 1996/31 and challenge the territorial integrity and sovereignty of state. We request you to request the Speaker to discontinue its statement and expunge these remarks from the proceedings of the Council. I thank you.
Thank you. We are presently considering item 10, technical cooperation and capacity building, including country reports mandated under item 10. During the general debate under this item, all speakers are expected to raise issues or comment on issues relating to this item. In this context, speakers may refer to specific situations by way of example. With this in mind, I give the back floor to the Speaker.
Thank you, Vice President. I am referring to the Framework Para 13, which states effective national policies based on human rights align the priorities and goals of the state with the conditions for its population to enjoy all human rights. It refers to the item 10. So, indiscriminate aerial bombardments on the villages of the Baloch people, burning their homes and enforced disappearances of the Baloch leads to the cleansing of the Baloch people. The number of victims of enforced disappearances is in thousands. The daylight abductions in front of many witnesses, taking them to undisclosed places and then keeping their whereabouts unknown to anybody, including family members of victims, for months and for years is a clear violation of UN laws and conventions. In many instances, there are evidences that they were taken to military cantonments by security forces and also by religious terrorist organizations. The religious terrorist organizations' representatives have been seen torturing the people in the state security camps with impunity in the Islamic State. The civil society representatives, analysts, thinkers and local people see it as a brutal response against the Baloch people for presenting their concerns toward the strategic designs in Balochistan and particularly strategic naval designs in Gawadar. The systematic abuse of human rights, subjugation, suppression and involuntary disappearances constitute a process of slow motion genocide of the Baloch people. Thank you.
Thank you. Before moving to the next speaker, may I request all delegations to deal with human rights issues with dignity and respect and to adhere to the well-established principles of the United Nations. I call upon all speakers to uphold UN standards when referring to countries. Thank you. I would like now to call the Women Organization for Development and Capacity Building. They are not in the room. Asian Legal Resource Center. Amnesty International.
Madam Vice President, Amnesty International welcomes the report of the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights on Boko Haram. This statement draws on our written statement to this session about human rights abuses and violations against civilians by Boko Haram and the security forces in Nigeria and Cameroon. The conflict between the armed group Boko Haram and government security forces of Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger and Chad has devastated the lives of hundreds of thousands of civilians. Despite recent advances by Nigerian and regional armed forces, Boko Haram fighters continue to deliberately target civilians while its leaders evade justice. At the same time, the response from the government security forces, particularly in northern Cameroon and northeast Nigeria, has been marred by serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. Despite recent commitments by President Buhari, Nigeria has yet to take adequate steps to thoroughly and independently investigate crimes under international law and other serious human rights violations by its forces. Similarly, serious incidents of human rights violations and possible crimes under international law have not been investigated effectively in Cameroon. We agree with the High Commissioner that prompt, thorough and independent investigations must be undertaken and all those responsible be brought to justice. In light of the ongoing crimes under international law by the parties to the conflict and the absence of justice for victims and their families, Amnesty International urges this Council to renew its request for the High Commissioner to report regularly to it on human rights abuses and violations committed in the countries where Boko Haram operates. Given the challenges in the preparation of the report described by the High Commissioner, we urge the Council to ensure that requests for future reports call for OHCHR to receive the support necessary to fulfill those requests effectively. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Prahar.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights report on the 40th and 41st session approved May 2008 and November 2008 supplement number 2 suggested and recommended the state party to recommend consideration on the repealing of the military law in India, that is the Armed Forces Special Power Act. Madam Vice President, in the Human Rights Council 19th session, agenda reported of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders, Margaret Sakaria, addendum mission to India from January 2011, recommended the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Power Act, and security legislation should be reviewed in light of the international human rights standards in India. Again, the country missions to India, Christoph Hens, United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions, visited India from 19 to 30 March 2012. He called for the repeal of this act and states that AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Power Act, clearly violates international law. A number of UN treaty bodies have pronounced it to be violations of international law, namely HRC in 1997, CEDAW in 2007, CERT in 2007, and CESCR in 2008. And my predecessor has also called for its repeal. Madam Vice President, since then, India has not submitted any further periodic reports, thereby effectively depriving the committee of the opportunity to reconsider the matter. My organization is urging you to press upon Indian government to abide the United Nations and other international laws to define the color of its democracy. Democracy cannot be muffled and run by military law for certain sections of the people, that is the Mongoloid race of the Manipur and Northeast India. Thank you so much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. International Career Support Association.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. UN Human Rights Commission report on comfort women called Cruel Slum Report. The directors comfort women as sex slaves. The conclusion is this report is mainly based on two sources. First, the testimonies of former comfort women. Second, the confession of Seiji Yoshida on his involvement in abduction of Korean women. However, both these sources have been disproved. Several former comfort women confessed to Korean professor that they told lies to the Sri Lankan UN Special Rapporteur, Ms. Kumaraswamy. Cont'd Chapter, an organization under North Korean influence, confronted these women and trained them to testify they were abducted by Japanese army. The second source of her conclusion is Yoshida's book, My War Crime. He admitted it was a fiction. However, it has been diffused as a historical fact by Asahi newspaper for 32 years. Last August, Asahi admitted their articles were false and published an official apology. Japan has adopted a cabinet decision affirming no evidence of abduction was found. Moreover, the U.S. Army Report number 49 of 1944 clearly states that comfort women are well-paid prostitutes. Madam Vice President, we request the withdrawal of the Kumaraswamy report.
Thank you. Association of World Citizens. Excuse me, we have to continue with the other speakers, please. Association of World Citizens.
Merci, Madame. Tout au long de cette session, nous avons pu constater que chaque continent et vraisemblablement chaque pays souffre à différents degrés et de formes contemporaines d'esclavage ou de servitude. Nos jeunes générations en ont pris conscience de plein fouet au cours de ces derniers mois, au vu de ces masses humaines. La phrase lancinante des chefs de famille de ces marcheurs qui nous est adressée lors de medical checking qui accompagnent ces familles est la suivante. Où peut-on s'adresser pour une vente d'organes humaines parce que nos enfants ont faim? Certaines familles marchent depuis plus d'1 an. Nous avons actuellement un appel par de multiples universités, par de multiples jeunes qui demandent aux Européens de s'unir. Ils disent to uphold human rights and human dignity. Tens of thousands of refugees are trying to reach the safe haven of Europe. Too many have died, have been mistreated by authorities and exploited by people smugglers. It's time for Europe to take decisive action, allowing refugees to enter the EU legally. 70 years after the end of World War II, Europe has to take decisive action to avoid another human tragedy. Now, peut-être que ce seraient des trains qui seraient peut-être les mieux adaptés. Qu'est-ce que l'Union européenne pourrait demander aux Nations unies pour nous aider devant cette tragédie? Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Merci. Organisation internationale pour les pays les moins avancés.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The International Organization for Least Developed Countries considers the improvement of technical cooperation and capacity building in the field of human rights a major challenge for the international community, and particularly for Human Rights Council. In this sense, we welcome Human Rights Council Resolution 29/24 on capacity building and technical cooperation with Côte d'Ivoire and other LDCs in the field of human rights adopted in July 2014, and would encourage the Council to do so with other LDCs. Technical cooperation is essential for the effective protection and promotion of human rights, is essential for LDCs to strengthen the capacity of states and their human rights institutions, their administrations of justice, and to achieve constitutional and legislative reforms in order to fulfill their obligations under international human rights instruments. Advisory services, assistance, and capacity building provided by the OHCHR and other UN agencies to the LDCs are of great value for these states as they contribute to a more effective prevention of human rights abuses. Therefore, the International Organization for Least Developed Countries welcomes the efforts by the Office of the High Commissioner to provide technical assistance and capacity building in LDCs and recalls that this cooperation should be based on the principles of cooperation and genuine dialogue with the states concerned, and calls upon the OHCHR and other UN bodies to continue to provide technical cooperation to LDCs in an active manner upon request to ensure compliance with their obligations in the field of human rights and the implementation of the recommendations of the Universal Periodic Review that I have accepted. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. Sirid.
Thank you, Vice President. We thank to this Council for publishing a report on the 16th of September detailing the war crimes that took place during the civil war in Sri Lanka. It has been almost 6 years since the civil war took place in Sri Lanka, and yet the Sri Lankan government has not shown any improvement in this process of resettlement and sharing power with Tamils. Still, the political detainees who were surrendered during the final war are kept in the prison. Still, nobody is being held accountable or lawfully punished for the murders of many journalists and the humanitarian activists who were killed, abducted, and tortured in Sri Lanka for trying to show the truth about the genocide. We are here presenting to you as a last resort to urge you to initiate an international independent investigation in the genocide in Sri Lanka. We ask this for two reasons. The first is that we have no faith in the integrity of domestic investigation, and the second is that should a domestic investigation take place, it will not provide an accurate picture of the genocide, since the victims will not feel able to come forward safely as witness. We do not believe the investigation carried out by or in partnership with the Sri Lankan government will ever bring out the truth. Such an investigation could not be impartial. I humbly request to this Council, please do necessary arrangement for an international virtual war crime inquiry without any further delay, as this is our last hope to bring the truth to light and give a hope for the lives of the remaining Tamils who were still living in the fear and under difficult circumstances in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you. Al Zubair Charitable Foundation.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أنا دكتورة مها أحمد عبد العال، منظمة الزبير الخيرية السودان. بياني عن الحوار المجتمعي في السودان. تتأثر حالة حقوق الإنسان بصورة رئيسية بالحرب الأهلية التي تدور وحاها منذ عام 1983 ولم تتوقف إلا عام 2005 عند توقيع اتفاقية السلام الشامل، والتي أدت إلى إجراء الاستفتاء وانفصال جنوب السودان وتكوين دولته الخاصة به. ولم تتوقف الحرب في الجنوب حتى اشتعلت في دارفور التي بدأت بصراعات محلية حول الموارد ثم تطورت إلى صراعات مسلحة. ثم اشتعلت الحرب أيضا في كل من النيل الأزرق وولاية جنوب كردفان بسبب خرق فصائل الحركة الشعبية اتفاقية السلام الشامل. ونحن كمنظمة مجتمع مدني نؤيد اتجاه الدولة نحو الحوار مع كل الفئات المؤيدة والمعارضة للنظام حتى تصل إلى وفاق يؤدي إلى سلام شامل وإلى حماية المدنيين من ويلات الحرب حتى ينعموا بثمرات السلام بخدمات التعليم والصحة وتنمية الموارد ودخل الأفراد والأسر. وتدعو منظمة المجتمع المدني مجلس حقوق الإنسان إلى العمل على رفع العقوبات الأحادية الأمريكية على السودان التي أدت إلى إلحاق أضرار فادحة بصحة الطفل والمرأة ومنع المجتمع السوداني من التمتع بكافة الحقوق والخدمات. كذلك ندعو إلى إنهاء مهمة الخبير المستقل لأنه ومنذ خلال تفويضه الذي دام حوالي 3 سنوات لم يتمكن من تقديم دعم أو مساعدة لتدريب الفئات العدلية والشرطية ومنظمات العمل الطوعي. وشكرا جزيلا.
Thank you. Solidarité Suisse Guinée.
Madame la vice-présidente, la nébuleuse Boko Haram continue de sévir de manière toujours aussi barbare que l'événement des 200 filles du lycée de Chibok en mai 2014, qui a ému le monde entier, mobilisé toutes les énergies exprimées notamment par le slogan « Bring back our girls ». Ce jeudi 24 septembre, le groupe requalifié État islamique en Afrique de l'Ouest a attaqué un village du sud-est du Niger, proche du Nigeria voisin, entraînant 15 morts et 4 blessés, ainsi que d'importants dégâts matériels, dont 22 maisons et un moulin à grains incendiés. Cet événement, visant à célébrer de façon macabre la fête de l'Eid al-Adha, est passé presque inaperçu, comme si le phénomène de l'oubli avait fait son œuvre. Solidarité Suisse-Guinée rappelle que les rapts de masse perpétrés par la secte islamiste depuis près de 6 ans d'existence sont innombrables à ce jour. Le nouveau président élu du Nigeria, Mohamed Buhari, s'est récemment rendu à Paris en promettant de tout faire pour libérer les captives, allant jusqu'à affirmer en échange de l'amnistie de prisonniers de Boko Haram. Si l'on se fie à l'amnistie internationale, le chiffre s'élèverait à près de 2000 femmes enlevées à ce jour. Malgré les 8700 militaires de la coalition internationale, dont le but est d'affaiblir les terroristes tout désignés, mais difficilement localisés, ceux-ci poursuivent leur dessein funeste en toute impunité. Solidarité Suisse-Guinée souligne toutefois les mérites des forces du Tchad et du Nigeria pour leur engagement. Dans ce sinistre portrait d'exaction aux droits humains fondamentaux, Solidarité Suisse-Guinée tient tout de même à relever la délivrance de 241 femmes et un enfant, ce qui constitue un coup de semonce significatif au réseau. Solidarité Suisse-Guinée exhorte la communauté internationale à ne pas baisser la garde en reposant la question lancinante: où sont les kidnappés de Chibok? Solidarité Suisse-Guinée appelle le Conseil à poursuivre sa lutte contre l'impunité de ces terroristes.
6 Human Rights Group. Please, 6 Human Rights Group.
Thank you, Madam President. Acknowledging reports 20 and 26, particularly on participation and inclusiveness of all communities in state systems, the HRC may consider a proposal for Convention on Diversity made by the Sikh Human Rights Group at the 2001 World Conference Against Racism as a generic set of principles for the modern state. Current conventions dealing with rights and anti-discrimination instruments are based on the Westphalian meta-ethnic statehood as concessions gained in the dynamics of power. They essentially address defects in European post-Enlightenment philosophies. Most countries are now multicultural, multiracial and multi-ethnic. We believe the modern state needs a new orientation, acknowledging and accommodating the diversity of communities within its boundaries and its juridical systems with a positive approach. Some ancient civilizations, such as South Asia, have a pluralistic approach to diversity, although disrupted during and since colonialism. Some countries, such as UK and Canada, have evolved towards pluralistic state systems guided by modern ideas of plurality. We urge HRC to consider setting up a working group on a proposal for a convention on diversity, drawing on ancient pluralistic civilizations and modern pluralistic states. We also wish to take this opportunity to raise a historical misunderstanding on the issue of caste, much raised in HRC and the Committee on Third. There is no direct translation of this word in any Indian language. New research by academics from Cambridge, Berkeley and India exposes contemporary caste, a divisive construction by colonial rulers and evangelical missionaries who transformed a minor practice into a universal institution in India through census system. European phrenologists grafted caste on Indians, sometimes by assessing their heads' height and pigmentation. Such reconstruction of indigenous societies was common during colonialism. We urge HRC and Third Committee to be a bridge to the latest academic research and assist in promoting inclusiveness and rejoicing the wondrous diversity of Jatis by reviewing its understanding of this colonial instituted malice. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. With this last intervention, we have now concluded the general debate on agenda items 2 and 10. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before we close agenda items 2 and 10, I understand that a few delegations have requested to exercise their right of replay. I will now give the floor to Thailand. You have 3 minutes.
Madam Vice President, my delegation wishes to reply to some of the issues raised by the delegation of the United States
and the representative of the organization Lawyers' Rights Watch Canada. The context from which the events in Thailand happened are indeed complex, and ultimately, achieving sustainable democracy is in the hands of the Thai people. Thailand is moving ahead with various reforms to lay a solid foundation for strengthened democracy. Elections are planned for 2017, when the constitution drafting process and the promulgation of the necessary organic laws will be completed. For us, the emphasis is indeed on inclusiveness. The views from our foreign friends are also taken in, and as with the views from all sides within Thailand on the ongoing reform process. Thailand's commitments are reflected in the statement of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, delivered just 2 days ago at the UNGA, where he said, quote, "Thailand is currently undertaking comprehensive reforms on several fronts to make our country stronger and better. Hopefully, in the process, the reforms will help us to achieve security, prosperity, sustainability, and pave the way towards resilient democracy." Some of the major reforms include amending laws and strengthening the justice system, improving public sector efficiency, creating trust, social reconciliation and unity, and harmonizing social order. End of quote. On the use of military courts, it should also be recognized that defendants are entitled to due process and the same set of rights accorded to those who appear before an ordinary court. This includes the right to legal counsel, to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, and to the appeal process. Moreover, only a limited number of cases relating to the most serious offenses are submitted to the military court. Finally, let me reiterate Thailand's strong commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights. Our determination is not diminished by the challenges we are currently facing. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Myanmar. You have 3 minutes.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Yesterday, my delegation made it very clear that Myanmar is not bound by HRC Resolution 29/21. I would like to repeat it now. Yesterday and today, 2 or 3 speakers spoke about Myanmar concerning citizenship, the right to vote, hate speech, and IDP camps. In Myanmar, nobody is above the law. Those who wish to become citizens are required to go through the criteria set by the citizenship law of 1982. There are no shortcuts. If you are a citizen, you will have the right to vote. There is no other way around. Concerning hate speech, Myanmar society never encourages hate speech. Like in other countries, other societies, incidents of hate speech happen very rarely. There is no institutionalization of hate speech in my country. 1 or 2 speakers argued that the living conditions at temporary shelters are worsening. That is not true. That is not true. Those in the shelters are provided with the basic necessities such as food and health care on daily basis. Their living conditions are not worse, if not better, than an average rural family in a developing country. Myanmar still lives in the third world. We are not in the first world. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Nigeria. You have 3 minutes.
Madam Vice President, my delegation makes the right of reply in response to the statement by Amnesty International on the High Commissioner's report on Boko Haram activities. My delegation expresses strong reservations about the aspects of Amnesty's statement which sought to impugn the willingness or capacity of the Nigerian government to investigate any allegation of human rights abuses purportedly committed by members of the Nigerian armed forces in the course of the counter-insurgency operations in the northeast region. It's not going. Madam Vice President, this allegation by Amnesty does not reflect an accurate assessment of the response of the Nigerian government to the situation and to the political commitment already made by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that investigations will be carried out. Nigeria has consistently deployed its internal legal and investigative mechanisms to thoroughly investigate all such allegations and will continue to do so. A lot is being done by the Nigerian government, and we have reiterated the Nigerian government resolve to operationalize the joint task force by even committing funds for its takeoff. Besides this, human rights organizations such as Amnesty must refrain from making unresearched assertions against countries, especially in respect of sensitive issues as the current ongoing campaign against the terrorist activities of Boko Haram. Nigeria is a country, not a human rights organization. I thank you.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to Cameroon. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for giving me the floor. The Cameroonian delegation wishes to exercise its right of reply in relation to the statement made by Amnesty International, in which it accuses the Cameroonian forces of law and order of perpetrating grave violations of human rights and international humanitarian law in its fight against the Boko Haram terrorist sect. Cameroon wishes to hereby state before this August Assembly that the Cameroonian army, which is a well-trained army in international humanitarian law, and which is protecting the rights of Cameroonians, cannot turn round and start violating the rights of Cameroonian citizens. So the statement made by Amnesty International is lacking in research, and we feel that they should carry out better research so as to give full information of what is happening on the ground. The Cameroonian army is protecting the rights of Cameroonians and not vice versa. Thank you.
Thank you. With this last intervention, we have now concluded the consideration of agenda items 2 and 10. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this meeting. We will reconvene at 1 p.m. to start taking action on draft decisions and conclusions. I hereby declare closed the 39th meeting of the 30th session of the Human Rights Council.